Chapter 61 God-Given Opportunity. Unfounded Worry? Cai Yong knew astronomy, fortune-telling, and physiognomy. He could often see through a person's future with just one meeting. Wasn't Yuan popular in this era? Cai Yong thought that her father just disdained to compete for this name, otherwise what would anyone else have to do? So the same feeling, some people are completely intuitive, but in Cai Yong's case it is actually a collection of various information, not something illusory. It's like two people playing chess. The more Cai Yong knows about chess, the easier it is for him as a bystander to see through the winner in advance. And if Cai Yong also knows the two people playing chess very well, then maybe they just put down two pieces and Cai Yong can directly guess how they will continue to play. It can be said that the more you know, the more accurate your simulation of the future will be. Although it seems that there is no evidence, it is actually because there is too much information and it cannot be summarized and sorted out for a while. Little do people know that human potential is infinite and there will be a light guiding you in the dark, which is the so-called intuition. Therefore Cai Yong's feeling was not groundless. Maybe it was not 100% certain to come true, but Cai Yong believed that there was a 70% to 80% chance of it happening. This was definitely a very dangerous signal, and Cai Yong himself thought so too. Otherwise, why would he let Cai Yong leave with some important books? Not only was he protecting the books, but he was also protecting the person. Then Dad, why don't we move forward the literary duel between Sun Quan and Yang Xiu? After they finish the duel, we can go out immediately in the name of traveling to Shangyang, Shuzhou or Izhou, which are relatively peaceful places. If nothing happens, we can come back then. Cai Yong knew that her father was a bit stubborn, so she turned and made a suggestion. Cai Yong pondered. Once the world is in chaos, only Izhou will be able to be relatively peaceful. However, it is a bit unreasonable to start a literary duel for no reason. Moreover, a sudden journey and deliberately emptying the collection of books will also arouse suspicion. You should know that the ancients did not like to travel on a whim, especially for people like Cai Yong who had a huge influence. They would prepare for a trip for at least a month in advance. Not only did they prepare for themselves, but they also gave others time to prepare. They would only decide to leave temporarily if they encountered some unexpected events. For a moment Cai Yong was anxious and speechless. She thought she should find someone to discuss it. At worst she could set a trap for Cai Yong. Anyway, she had to trick him away first. Afternoon. Qin Xuan visited Sun Quan's residence again. From a distance the stealing in Sun Quan's spiritual world began to flash and Sun Quan's eyes lit up. This was a phenomenon that had never happened before. Could it be that Qin Xuan had already obtained the eternal life secret? What a godsend! Originally Sun Quan thought that the secret of immortality was something in the palace after all. Although Qin Xuan could borrow it, he might not be able to take it out of the palace. Their transaction could only be carried out in the palace and Sun Quan had no other ideas. But now it was different. Since Qin Xuan could take the secret of immortality out of the palace, Sun Quan had countless ways to think of. If he was lucky, Sun Quan could get a complete copy of the secret of immortality in just one try. In an instant Sun Quan made a plan in his mind. Although there is only one skill left today, which is indeed a bit embarrassing, but if you operate well, one time is enough. Zhu Mao. Sun Quan whispered, listen to my orders later, don't hesitate and act decisively. Zhu Mao narrowed his eyes. To kill? Sun Quan shook his head. Even in a fantasy world there were some things he couldn't do. Just hold him back. I understand. Zhu Mao nodded and didn't ask what Sun Quan wanted to do. The order is complete. Sun Quan then went to meet Qin Xuan. He did not use his skills rashly. First he had to confirm that what Qin Xuan was carrying was the secret of immortality. Brother Qin, you haven't thought about tomorrow's questions so early, have you? Sun Quan said with a smile. Zhu Mao beside him couldn't help but sigh that this second son at such a young age was quite cunning. Looking at his current state, who would have thought that he actually had the intention of attacking Qin Xuan in his heart? Qin Xuan smiled at Sun Quan and took out a simple cloth book from his sleeve without keeping him in suspense. What do you think this is? Sun Quan's eyes lit up. The secret of immortality? Although he already had the skill card of stealing as evidence, Sun Quan still resisted the urge and asked, "How can I believe this is true? The Secret of Immortality was written by Guan Chengzi. It uses special materials and is impervious to water, fire, swords and guns. Otherwise it would not have been passed down to this day. You only need to verify the material to know." "I can't fake this," Qin Chuan said. "Oh? Of course I won't hand the Secret of Immortality to you. I will do everything you want to verify it." Qin Chuan added, "If you still don't trust me, then there is nothing for us to talk about. Then use the knife to verify it." Sun Quan directly took out the Qingwang sword. If even the Qingwang sword was ineffective, it would prove that the Changsheng Ju was definitely not fake. Of course, Sun Quan actually had a bit of a bad taste in his mouth. After all, things in the system were unpredictable. If he accidentally destroyed the Changsheng Ju, although the contents inside could still be pieced together, Qin Chuan's expression would probably be ugly. With this thought in mind, Sun Quan stepped forward. Qin Chuan straightened the eternal life secret for him and Sun Quan chopped it with a knife. Clang! Failed to break through the defense. How? Qin Chuan smiled slightly. In his opinion, this result was natural. Sun Quan's eyes widened, his eyes sparkled, and he almost drooled. Good stuff, it really is good stuff. The level of this alone is several levels higher than that damned Shinqing Heart Sutra. So Sun Quan did not hesitate any longer and decisively used the "let me think twice" skill for the last time today. Time is suspended, space is broken. Let me think 3 times. Boundary of fantasy. Okay, which page do you want to start from? I'll turn it over for you, Qin Chuan said. There's no rush for this kind of thing. Let me think about it carefully. Sun Quan pretended to be having a hard time making a decision. At the same time, taking advantage of Qin Chuan's unpreparedness, he instantly used the steel card in the spiritual world. Qin Chuan felt his hand slip, and in his stunned state the Secret of Immortality actually reached Sun Quan? It was unbelievable. After all, this was too unscientific, so Qin Chuan forgot to react. You know, Sun Quan was a quirky person. Qin Chuan was always on guard against Sun Quan snatching the book, but he had always held the Secret of Immortality tightly. It is no exaggeration to say that if Sun Quan wanted to snatch the book, he would have to break Qin Chuan's hand first. But what is going on now? Did Sun Quan smear oil on the eternal life secret? Qin Chuan was confused, but Sun Quan was not. Zhu Mao. While shouting, Sun Quan rolled on the ground without caring about his image, leaving Zhu Mao enough space to deal with Qin Chuan. Zhu Mao had already been a always prepared young pioneer and instantly stood in front of Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan finally realized what had happened and was furious. Sun Quan. Sun Quan did not even dare to look back. Help me stop him for at least an hour. After saying that, he ran into the house and closed the door tightly. Although the Changsheng Ju was very short with only 7 pictures, time is limited and Sun Quan must memorize it all without making any mistakes. Just kidding, this is what he wants to practice on his own. If he remembers it wrong and ends up going crazy, it would be a joke. Chapter 62 Puzzles. An hour later. Sun Quan exited the Sansi illusion with a confused look on his face and doubted himself for the first time. Okay, which page do you want to start from? I'll turn it over for you, Qin Chuan in front of him said. Wait a minute. Sun Quan suddenly stopped Qin Chuan. Let me ask you a question first. Since you can take this eternal life secret out of the palace, that means it has been in your custody for this period of time, right? Qin Chuan narrowed his eyes, quickly retracted the Changsheng Ju and said vigilantly. What evil ideas do you have in mind? Brother Qin, can't you trust me someday? Sun Quan shook his head and smiled bitterly. What I want to say is that since there are so many opportunities, we don't need to rush. Today I will talk to you about something else. Next time when I am ready, you can show me this eternal life secret. What are you trying to prepare? Qin Chuan continued to doubt Sun Quan. He would not take it lightly. There was no way. Who told Sun Quan to behave so abnormally? He was eager to swallow the immortal secret just now. What made Sun Quan suppress his desire? Preparation? Sun Quan was not going to set a trap to trap him. The secret of immortality is not an ordinary thing. I naturally need to prepare some props to observe it. Sun Quan explained, deliberately keeping it a secret as if it were true, making Qin Xuan wonder, is there really a special way to observe the secret of immortality so other people can't understand it? I didn't expect Brother Qin to get the secret of immortality so quickly. I haven't even had time to prepare the props. Don't worry, now that I know Brother Qin's ability, I have a good idea in my mind and I will naturally be more willing to cooperate with you. Qin Xuan thought about it and agreed. Then I'll trust you for once. Yes, he had already negotiated the terms with Sun Quan. Sun Quan would be able to obtain the entire Book of Immortality in 7 months at the latest. In that case, why should Sun Quan take the risk of offending Qin Xuan and even Sihang Jingjai just for the sake of being in a hurry? Sun Quan is a smart man and would not do such a stupid thing. So Qin Xuan carefully put away the eternal life secret and looked at Sun Quan again. So what do you want to talk to me about? Let's go inside and talk. Sun Quan said, taking Qin Xuan into the inner room, and actually left Zhu Mao outside. Qin Xuan's eyes narrowed. Sun Quan didn't trust Zhu Mao? Impossible. In other words, Sun Quan wanted to talk about something very sensitive, and sending Zhu Mao away was just to reduce Qin Xuan's concerns. What exactly did Sun Quan want to talk about? Close the door. Brother Qin, have you told the Queen Mother what happened yesterday? Sun Quan asked, straight to the point. Qin Xuan's face darkened. Why do you know this? Only the palace should know that he met with Empress Dowager He. Could it be that Sun Quan really had an affair with the 10 eunuchs? Don't worry, it's not what you think. Otherwise I wouldn't have said it. Sun Quan said, seeing Qin Xuan still had a suspicious expression. He said helplessly, well, it was Master Yuan who told me. As for where he knew it from, I don't know. Why did Master Yuan tell you this? Qin Xuan frowned. Stop. Sun Quan hurriedly stopped him. You are just like a curious baby. Why do you want to know everything? Curious baby? Qin Xuan opened his mouth wide. These words came from the mouth of a little kid like Sun Quan, which made him speechless. I just want to ask Brother Qin, why do you do this? Didn't you say yesterday that the Han dynasty could no longer withstand any more turmoil? Sun Quan questioned. Yes, I did say that. Qin Xuan nodded, but we can't not give some people a warning, otherwise they will only become more unscrupulous. Don't worry, I didn't tell Queen Mother He everything about what happened last night. I just said that Prince Chunlu had the intention of winning you over privately and you told me about it, that's all. Qin Xuan glanced at Sun Quan and continued. You probably don't know that Empress Dowager He is quite prejudiced against me. I hope to use this opportunity to ease the relationship with her. At least in this matter of your majesty, I hope she won't interfere with our plan. As for what I said, it's actually harmless. At most, Empress Dowager He will just put pressure on me in the palace. On the one hand, it was to warn those who were interested in the palace, and on the other hand, Qin Xuan also explained to Empress Dowager He again the attitude of their Sihang Jingjai. At least on the issue of supporting the young emperor, both sides were consistent. She hoped that Empress Dowager He would not lose the big picture for the sake of personal reasons. Sun Quan raised his eyebrows. What if it backfires? No matter how reasonable Qin Xuan's words were, Sun Quan only looked at the results. I have thought this matter over carefully and there is no possibility of self-defeating. Qin Xuan said firmly. He never mentioned Li Ru to Empress Dowager He from beginning to end, so Empress Dowager He naturally would not think of Dong Zhuo. As long as Dong Zhuo was not forced to rebel, Qin Xuan believed that everything was under control. How blind confidence is not a good thing. Sun Quan sneered. Brother Qin, let me be frank. If the situation in Kyoto changes drastically because of you, I will try to stay away from Luoyang. Don't blame me for disregarding our friendship and not following your plan. Sun Quan finally revealed his true purpose. He pushed all the responsibility onto Qin Xuan and directly stated that he might escape. Then Sihang Jingjai would only blame Qin Xuan for his poor performance and would not put the blame on Sun Quan. Qin Xuan was silent. If that day really comes, our plan will probably be shelved. At this moment neither of them thought the day would come so soon. That night Sun Quan was unable to fall asleep because he couldn't sleep because of the matter of the secret of immortality. What happened during the day was too abnormal. In an hour Sun Quan didn't even memorize a single picture? This made Sun Quan wonder if his memory had declined to the level of an old man. Of course it could also be that he was not good at figurative memory, which made it easy for him to remember words but difficult to remember pictures. In order to verify this, after Qin Xuan left, Sun Quan asked someone to find a medical book and then asked someone to draw lines on it at random. In the end it was confirmed that although it was indeed difficult to remember, it was far from being completely impossible to remember. This is interesting. Sun Quan could only think of one conclusion: the Changsheng Ju is indeed a good thing. But good things are good things, but now the problem comes. Whether it is rubbing or other things, it is meaningless in the illusion. If you can't memorize it by rote, do you really have to find Qin Xuan to copy one every month in reality? 7 whole months, can Sun Quan really wait? Just as Sun Quan was thinking about what to do, there was a sudden commotion outside, followed by Zhu Mao knocking on the door. Second young master. Something seems to have happened outside. What happened? Sun Quan quickly turned over in bed. It couldn't be that He Jin died and Dong Zhuo broke in, right? I'm not quite sure, but a lot of soldiers have come, Zhu Mao said. Sun Quan's eyes flashed and he made a prompt decision. Where's the back door? Let's go check it out first. Soon Zhu Mao came back. No one is at the back door. That's good. Sun Quan breathed a sigh of relief. They didn't surround his house, which meant they weren't coming for him at least. Let's go and sneak up to the wall and take a look. Chapter 63 Change. Sun Quan followed Zhu Mao to the high wall next to the main gate. Under the cover of night he secretly looked out and found that there were indeed crowds of people outside. Teams of soldiers were moving with torches in hand. The atmosphere was tense and solemn. What happened? Sun Quan kept thinking during this period of time, unless He Jin died there shouldn't be anything serious, right? Zhu Mao on the side suddenly said. Second young master, look at the formation of those soldiers, it's a bit strange. Oh? Sun Quan withdrew his thoughts and continued to look outside. He immediately understood what Zhu Mao meant. You mean most of those soldiers have their backs to us as if they were protecting us? That's right. Zhu Mao nodded. If they were targeting them, they would definitely be facing their house. If it was a normal patrol, they would also be alert to both sides. But now these soldiers completely ignored them as if there was no one here. So there was only one possibility: they regarded this place as their confidant and they were protecting it. Sun Quan's heart moved. First of all, he was sure that something must have happened, otherwise no one would come to protect him. And in the current capital, the one who cares about him, Sun Quan, so much and has the ability to mobilize soldiers, is basically about to appear. Yuan Shu? This cheap father-in-law is really nice to me. Let Zhou Tai go out and ask what happened. Sun Quan said. Yes. Zhu Mao immediately went to arrange it. After a while Zhou Tai returned. As expected, the soldiers outside were from the Huban army and were Yuan Shu's men. They did not hide anything about Zhou Tai's problems. Second young master, I heard from outside that General He Jin has personally led people to surround the residence of General Dongzhong of the cavalry. Lord Yuan is worried that there will be unusual movements from all parties, so he sent them here to protect you and said that if possible he hopes that you can move to the Yuan mansion in the near future. In addition, Zhou Tai suddenly lowered his voice, I heard that there were changes in the palace tonight. Sun Quan's face changed. Sure enough, his brother Qin had gone too far. He had vowed that there would be no setbacks and that Queen Mother he would only put pressure on him in the palace. But before the day was over they really did it, and they did it both inside and outside the palace. The He family was going to completely wipe out the Dong family. I just wonder if Dong Zhuo would be implicated or if Dong Zhuo had already completely sided with He Jin. For a moment Sun Quan was quite speechless about Qin Xuan. In his impression, aren't the people of Xihanjingjai all very powerful? Not to mention winning a battle thousands of miles away, at least they can play with all the major forces in the palm of their hands. How come this Qin Xuan messed things up as soon as he came and messed it up so badly? At this moment Sun Quan had serious doubts about Qin Xuan's ability. No, he can't act completely according to Qin Xuan's plan. It's not that Sun Quan doesn't trust Qin Xuan, but it's entirely possible that Qin Xuan means well but does bad things. Sun Quan must completely control his destiny in his own hands. On this day, countless people in the capital city stayed awake all night. Empress Dowager Dong's nephew General Dong Zhong was surrounded by General He Jin's troops in his own house. Knowing that he was powerless, he committed suicide in his house. On the same day, Empress Dowager Dong suddenly fell ill and died in Yanla Palace. The palace was in mourning and the whole city was under martial law. Cai Yong's plan was aborted and she could not leave the city for the time being. Early the next morning, Qin Xuan came to see Sun Quan as usual. Haha, brother Qin doesn't look like he slept well last night? Sun Quan said deliberately. If nothing unexpected happened, Qin Xuan probably didn't sleep all night. This is today's question, please write it down. Qin Xuan directly handed the question and answer he had prepared to Sun Quan. Sun Quan took it and said in surprise. Oh? With such a big incident we still have to go to the palace today? Whether to go or not is not up to us to decide. It's better to be prepared. If it's not needed today, then we can go tomorrow. Qin Xuan said. Then I wonder what brother Qin has to say about what happened last night. Sun Quan asked. Don't worry, everything is under control. Qin Xuan replied. Sun Quan curled his lips and said, you are just being stubborn. Maybe the worst has not happened yet, but the direction of things has exceeded your original expectations, right? Sun Quan was right. Qin Xuan was not as calm as he appeared. Don't forget that Qin Xuan's real age was only about 14 or 15 years old. For a long-term event like guiding the young emperor to study, Qin Xuan might not feel too much pressure. But for a major instantaneous event like yesterday that was enough to determine the future of the Han dynasty, the pressure was far beyond the capacity of Qin Xuan's small shoulders to bear. It can be said that even if everything goes as planned, Qin Xuan will be scared and sweat afterwards, not to mention that such a big change has happened now. The so-called calmness is pretended by Qin Xuan. He is not pretending for others to see but for himself to see, because the more critical the moment, the more chaos cannot be allowed and the more calmness is needed. Fortunately, because of Sun Quan's laziness yesterday, Qin Xuan had already written a letter to ask for help in advance, and he had some expectations which allowed Qin Xuan to successfully persevere. Otherwise the last straw could overwhelm him at any time. The two men arrived at the Taifu mansion and learned that Yuan Wei had not returned from the morning court. It seemed that there was indeed a lot of chaos in the court today. To exaggerate a little, those ministers might even have to stay in the palace for lunch. However, as Qin Xuan said, whether or not to attend class today was not something they could decide, so the two of them did not dare to go far and could only be prepared at all times. This gave Sun Quan and Qin Xuan a very rare time alone. I will move to the residence of Yuan Shu, the general of the Tiger Guards, later today. Starting tomorrow, brother Qin, remember to find me there. Sun Quan said to Qin Xuan. Yeah. Qin Xuan nodded subconsciously. He had been distracted the whole morning. Are you going to move to Yuan Shu's house? Qin Xuan asked suddenly, as if he had just realized what Sun Quan had just said. Sun Quan, what? Qin Xuan hesitated for a moment and spoke softly. Zhengmo, can you please do me a favor? Oh? Sun Quan's eyes moved. Tell me about it? Qin Xuan's face darkened and he said seriously. I want to know the details of General He Jin's attack on Dongzhong. Before the action was taken, it must have been discussed within the general's mansion. I see. Sun Quan thought about it and realized Qin Xuan's intention. Brother Qin, you think that General He Jin's attack on Dongzhong has nothing to do with you, right? Whether it has anything to do with me or not is not important anymore. Qin Xuan shook his head. It's just that from what I know about He Jin, he doesn't seem like such a decisive person. It's not that Qin Xuan wants to shirk responsibility, but even if Empress Dowager He really wants to take action against Empress Dowager Dong and find He Jin to discuss it with He Jin's character, they can't make a decision for a while. It's hard to imagine taking action so quickly, so Qin Xuan suspects that He Jin has already made a decision, but yesterday's incident gave him an opportunity. Or He Jin suddenly got some very solid evidence that Dong Zhong wanted to harm him, so He Jin didn't dare to delay at all and immediately took the initiative to kill Dong Zhong. Brother Qin, are you trying to say that there is someone else behind the scenes fanning the flames? Sun Quan narrowed his eyes. This Qin Xuan had an extremely sharp intuition. Chapter 64 Resistance. There was one thing that Sun Quan and Qin Xuan agreed on, that is, they both thought that General He Jin was indecisive and did not seem to be a decisive person. Therefore, regardless of what happened to Queen Mother Dong in the palace this time, the matter of Dong Zhong outside the palace probably had nothing to do with Qin Xuan. There must be someone behind the scenes pushing General He Jin to act so quickly. As for the person behind this, Sun Quan and Qin Xuan also had a consensus, and that was Dong Zhuo. In their opinion, Dong Zhuo was a member of the Dong family, but he was very close to General He Jin, so he might be a double agent. People on both sides knew that Dong Zhuo had a relationship with the other side, but people on both sides believed that Dong Zhuo was actually on their side. They seem to have never thought about the possibility that Dong Zhuo was a third party. Therefore, when the double agent Dong Zhuo told General He Jin that Dong wanted to take action against him, how could He Jin sit still? Even if he was indecisive, he would know to jump when the time was right. As long as Dong Zhuo really released similar information, as long as He Jin believed Dong Zhuo's words, this would inevitably be the result. And seeing that General He Jin actually alienated Sun Jian because of Dong Zhuo, we can see how much he trusted Dong Zhuo. What use was Sun Jian to He Jin? Just to fight the yellow turban bandits. But Dong Zhuo was different. With Dong Zhuo's help, He Jin could easily wipe out the lineage of Queen Mother Dong. I suspect that Li Ru discovered that you were unwilling to cooperate with him and was worried that you would expose him, so he took the initiative to find He Jin and completely rebelled against Queen Dowager Dong. Qin Xuan speculated. Sun Quan raised his eyebrows. Brother Qin, are you blaming me? Qin Xuan shook his head and said, How could I blame you? The choice you made at that time was the right one. Besides, didn't I say it before? The situation is still under control. Sun Quan shook his head secretly. It seems that you underestimated Dong Zhuo. Controllable? He is completely out of control. General He Jin easily dealt with the two biggest enemies, Queen Mother Dong and Dong Zhong. He must be in a period of blind arrogance for a short period of time. As the saying goes, arrogant soldiers will be defeated. This is exactly the most dangerous time for He Jin. Of course, He Jin also had a think tank under his command, and he certainly knew that he should seize the opportunity to pursue the victory and destroy the 10 attendants. But the 10 attendants and Empress Dowager Dong were two completely different situations. He Jin wanted to destroy the 10 attendants, but the biggest pressure he faced came from his sister Empress Dowager He. First, the 10 attendants were just eunuchs after all. They stood with Empress Dowager Dong back then, and now they might naturally stand with Empress Dowager He. In addition, when the young emperor ascended the throne, there were also several attendants who supported him, so Empress Dowager He had no need to destroy the 10 attendants. Second, when Emperor Ling was still around, Empress Dowager He made a mistake once and was almost removed from the position of queen. It was the 10 attendants who spoke for her. In addition, the two sides had been together in the palace for so many years, and they were grateful and affectionate. Empress Dowager He didn't have the heart to kill the 10 attendants. Thirdly, He Jin was outside the palace raising an army to wipe out the 10 attendants, so there would be no danger at all. However, Empress Dowager He stayed in the palace all the time. What if the 10 attendants became desperate and ended up hurting Empress Dowager He and her son? Do you think Empress Dowager He would agree with He Jin's behavior? The biggest enemy, Empress Dowager Dong, is dead, and the remaining 10 attendants have nothing to do with Empress Dowager He. As a woman, Empress Dowager He obviously hopes to live a peaceful and stable life and is unwilling to take any more risks. If you say it's controllable, then it's controllable. Sun Quan said, but since it's controllable, what can you do if you find out the truth? Ah. Qin Xuan sighed, I don't want to hide it from you, I just want to feel at ease. Otherwise, Qin Xuan was really worried that he would not be able to hold on, and even his state of mind would be damaged one day, and even his cultivation might decline. So it's just for peace of mind, then why should I help you? Sun Quan replied immediately. You? Qin Xuan stared at Sun Quan with his eyes wide open. He felt extremely aggrieved for a moment. From childhood to adulthood he was not a child of destiny, but because of his appearance and the fact that he was the young emperor he had always been taken care of in all aspects. However, when facing Sun Quan he never had an easy time. Is this person his destined enemy? Okay, can't I help you? Seeing Qin Xuan's expression, Sun Quan quickly changed his words and said speechlessly, Brother Qin, you are a grown man, so don't act pitiful in front of me, put on a pitiful look, okay? Sun Quan had never suspected that Qin Xuan was a woman, not only because she had enough masculine characteristics but also because Qin Xuan did not have any feminine manners in her speech or behavior. In other words, she was not effeminate at all. It could be said that this was the first time that Qin Xuan showed her weak side in front of Sun Quan. Humph. I'm not asking you to help me for free. Qin Xuan puffed his cheeks, looking depressed. Sun Quan curved his eyes and smiled. You said this yourself, Brother Qin. I didn't ask for a reward from you. You said we are all so familiar with each other, it's just a small matter, why are you being so polite? Then you don't want it? Qin Xuan said deliberately. Even if I don't want it, I know Brother Qin would feel embarrassed to not give it to me, right? Sun Quan laughed shamelessly. I really don't know what I owed you in my previous life. Qin Xuan was speechless, and without keeping him in suspense he said directly, after this is done I'll let you read one more page of the Changxing. What do you think? Qin Xuan knew that this was what Sun Quan cared about most at the moment, and only the secret of immortality could make Sun Quan truly willing to help him. I knew you were the best, Brother Qin. Sun Quan was delighted. If you need any help, just come to me. I'm afraid you're only willing to help me 6 times in total. Qin Xuan couldn't help but complain. Brother Qin, that's too polite. Sun Quan frowned. If you really think so, then I will just read one page of the Changxing as usual and I will still help you. How about that? Okay, I said something wrong, I apologize. Qin Xuan slapped his face lightly. Brother Qin, you are a good person in every way, but you are too polite and too distant. I wish you could treat me as a friend. Sun Quan shook his head and sighed. At this moment he had completely forgotten what Zhu Mao said. Personally, Sun Quan thought Qin Xuan was a good person and worth making friends with. Publicly, Sun Quan also hoped that if the world was in chaos in the future, Sihang Jingjai would support him. Sun Quan now had no idea that Sihang Jingjai would not support him in essence. Therefore, Sun Quan really wanted to build a good relationship with Qin Xuan. Friends? Qin Xuan murmured. Among his peers, apart from his fellow disciples, he never knew what friends were. Could people outside really be trusted like those in the sect? Afternoon. Yuan Wei returned from the palace, and Sun Quan and Qin Xuan also received accurate news. They didn't have to go to class today, so they finally had a day of leisure. So Sun Quan thought about it and thought whether he should try another way to try the Changxing again. After all, it was rare for him to have such abundant skills. But before Sun Quan could make full preparations, an uninvited guest came to his house. Cai Yong came to visit with Tang Yu. Chapter 65. Remember with the body. Mr. Sun, I hope you can bring forward the literary duel with Yang Xiu. Cai Yong came straight to the point. It can be seen that Cai Yong was desperate to find a cure by coming to Sun Quan at this time. Cai Yong was very concerned about Cai Yong's words. What happened last night made Cai Yong feel more threatened, so she felt that she could not wait any longer. Oh? Why? Sun Quan asked curiously. Just help me if I ask you to. Why are you asking so many questions? Tang Yu interrupted Sun Quan, leaving him with only a bitter smile. This young man Tang Yu had completely held a grudge against him because of what happened in the bamboo forest that day. However, ironically, Sun Quan's original likes and dislikes for Tang Yu and Qin Xuan were completely reversed at this moment. Qin Xuan was a polite person and Tang Yu was a temperamental person. Logically, Sun Quan should like Tang Yu more, but this Tang Yu was too unreasonable. Do you think Sun Quan owed you anything? Why did he always act so high and mighty? It is true that you are angry with Sun Quan because he is good friends with Qin Xuan, which is understandable. But if you are no longer friends and have become strangers, why should you act like Sun Quan owe you something, so I must help you? It can be said that if it weren't for the presence of his idol Cai Yong, Sun Quan would have turned against Tang Yu alone. What's so great about being a royal relative? I'll be the emperor in the future. Mr. Sun, the reason is indeed inconvenient to discuss in detail, but if you help me I will definitely remember this favor. I will definitely repay you in the future, Cai Yong said seriously. How could Sun Quan refuse when his idol said so much? Besides, this matter was not important to Sun Quan. I'll help you. Sun Quan agreed on the spot. Any day is fine. The sooner the better, Cai Yong said. Sun Quan had an idea. Seeing Cai Yong so anxious, he thought he might take the opportunity to test her. What about Mr. Cai? Don't worry, I'll take care of father's side. That's good. I will go find Yang Xiu later. As long as I say that Mr. Cai has something to do, he will not object, Sun Quan said deliberately. No. Cai Yong hurriedly stopped Sun Quan. You can't say it's my father's fault, you must say it's your own fault, Mr. Sun, do you understand? Otherwise I wouldn't have to come to you for help, Cai Yong emphasized. Sun Quan and Cai Yong looked at each other and nodded. I see. Although Cai Yong didn't say it out loud, she had revealed enough information. Could it be that because of what happened last night Cai Yong realized that something was wrong and wanted to run away? But Cai Yong's status was special, and as the saying goes, a single move can affect the entire body. If he ran away it would definitely cause panic, so Cai Yong couldn't show any intention of running away, so naturally he couldn't come forward to start a literary duel in advance. A wise man always plans ahead. Cai Yong is no simple man. Then I would like to thank you, Mr. Sunday. If you need anything in the future you can come to me. Cai Yong bowed slightly to Sun Quan. She didn't want to stay too long to avoid attracting the attention of someone with ulterior motives. Before leaving Tang you warned again. Sun Quan, I still say the same thing, you better take care of yourself. Be careful not to get too close to Qin Xuan, where you may be implicated in the future. Sun Quan didn't care about this. In the future? Will there really be such a day? So after the two left, Sun Quan did not hesitate and went to find Qin Xuan again. No matter what, Cai Yong at least gave Sun Quan a signal. Cai Yong was unwilling to wait for a few days, which meant that Sun Quan really had few chances. On this day it was a rare opportunity, so Sun Quan decided to start with the first page of The Secret of Immortality. Qin Xuan lived in a small house which in the words of later generations was a suite. Perhaps you could call it elegant, but perhaps Sun Quan was just a vulgar man. He thought this place was simply too shabby and did not suit Qin Xuan's identity. Brother Qin lives here? Sun Quan couldn't keep it secret. What would happen if the young emperor knew about this? Of course it can't be compared with Master Sun's house. Qin Xuan said calmly, inviting Sun Quan into the house. Have you eaten? Pointing at the bowl on the table. If you don't mind the simple food. Sun Quan looked at the green leaves on the table and couldn't help but say, Brother Qin, if you are short of money don't be embarrassed to tell me. These words almost choked Qin Xuan. Sun Quan continued to talk to himself. I know you don't get along with the Queen Mother, and the royal family probably didn't provide you with funds, but as the saying goes, you rely on friends when you go out. You can come to me and I'll provide you with free food and accommodation. If you're really embarrassed, then just consider it as a loan from me, okay? Thank you so much, Mr. Sun, for your kindness, Qin Xuan said, gritting his teeth. Sun Quan knew that Qin Xuan was not really in trouble. He had developed a habit of eating vegetarian food since childhood. He sat down, picked up the chopsticks, and directly picked up a piece of green vegetable and put it in his mouth. TSK, the taste is too bland. What do you think you cultivators are doing this for? Qin Xuan looked at Sun Quan, wanting to say something but stopping himself. Seeing that Sun Quan was still about to pick up his chopsticks, he quickly said, I've already used those chopsticks. He didn't know that Sun Quan would come, so how could he prepare the dishes and chopsticks in advance? Sun Quan shrugged. I don't care, why do you care? Of course, despite this, Sun Quan still put down his chopsticks. If it hadn't been mentioned he wouldn't have felt anything, but now that it was mentioned he really cared about it. So Sun Quan stopped dwelling on this topic and got straight to the point using the "let me think twice" skill for the first time today. Time is suspended, space is broken. Allow me to think 3 times before I begin. Boundary of fantasy. Brother Qin, I came to see you because I want to see the secret of immortality, Sun Quan said. Oh? Have you prepared everything? Qin Chuan asked. Sun Quan shook his head. The things are not ready, but I thought about it carefully later. It's not important, right? You said that I can read 1 page a month, but when it comes to a fixed page there should be no limit on the number of times. Sun Quan said today I don't have to go to the palace and I have nothing to do. So I want to take a look first. Okay, which page do you plan to read? Once you decide, you can only read this page for this month. Qin Chuan agreed. In fact, if Qin Chuan didn't want to bother, he could have asked Sun Quan to copy that page, but first, Qin Chuan didn't want a copy of the Changxing Ju to leak out, and second, Qin Chuan was also very interested in the Changxing Ju. Every time Sun Quan came to see him, he watched the practice under his nose, which just satisfied Qin Chuan's curiosity. Let's start from the first page. Sun Quan said without thinking, after all, it's not important. Okay. Qin Chuan nodded and took out the secret of immortality from his arms. He always carried this thing with him. Turning to the first page, Qin Chuan held the book and Sun Quan leaned in to take a closer look. In addition to pictures, the secret of immortality actually has text, but Guang Chengzi wrote it in Oracle bone script which no one could understand. Later, people who got the secret of immortality kept adding annotations on the side, which made the content of the text more and more biased and lost its true meaning. If you are really misled by those words, it will only become more and more difficult to practice the secret of immortality. Therefore, Sun Quan ignored those things and only focused on the pictures. Sun Quan's purpose is very simple. It can be just one word: practice. Since you can't remember it with your mind, remember it with your body. Once you learn it once, it's impossible to forget it. Therefore, Qin Chuan quickly discovered the change. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Chapter 66, Destruction and Reconstruction. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Qin Chuan screamed. Sun Quan actually started practicing directly according to the secret of immortality. Qin Chuan had read the Changxing Ju in the past 2 days. The exercise route on it was not reasonable at all. If it could be practiced according to the instructions, how could no one have learned it in so many years? Of course, if you practiced but just couldn't learn it, it would be fine if you just gave it a try. But if you continue to practice like this, at best you will go crazy and at worst your meridians will be broken. Isn't Sun Quan afraid of losing all his martial arts and becoming a cripple? Isn't he afraid of losing his life? Zhang Mo. Stop. Quick. Qin Chuan shouted hurriedly, panicking for a moment. He didn't dare to interrupt Sun Quan easily, fearing that Sun Quan's condition would become worse. This is why Sun Quan deliberately didn't let Zhu Mao come with him this time. He didn't want to be stopped. Qin Chuan was an outsider and would be more or less indecisive, but if Zhu Mao said that even if it hurt Sun Quan, Zhu Mao would decisively take action to stop Sun Quan. Don't disturb me. Sun Quan spoke with difficulty, and because of opening his mouth, a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. According to the route in the secret of immortality, forcing the exercise to work is indeed very harmful to the body. Sun Quan felt the pain at the beginning, but he didn't care and insisted on continuing. Needless to say, in the spiritual world, Sun Quan's 5-blood Magatama has only 4 blood left. After hesitating for a while, Sun Quan did not eat the peach immediately. He thought it should be saved for a more urgent moment. After all, no one knows what will happen next. If it is just a blood loss, it is not a big deal. What we are afraid of is a sudden fatal attack. No matter how much blood is left, it will be directly wiped out to 0. At that time, even gods can't save Sun Quan, and we can only rely on the system. Therefore, Sun Quan's awareness today is, don't eat peaches until the blood is 0. Sun Quan's worries were not false. As expected, he lost blood like a period. Although he had not yet encountered a situation where he lost several blood instantly, the speed of blood loss was obviously accelerating. Moreover, the real physical condition was not as intuitive as the blood volume in the spiritual world. After all, one blood left was actually a dying state. Sun Quan was infinitely close to such a state, and he even continued to be in this state. This made Qin Xuan on the side almost cry. Qin Xuan blamed himself very much, thinking that he was the one who harmed Sun Quan. If it weren't for him, Sun Quan wouldn't have gotten the secret of immortality and naturally wouldn't have had the chance to mess around. He knew that Sun Quan was young, impulsive and reckless, and was also a martial arts fanatic. He should have thought of this possibility in advance. Finally, seeing that Sun Quan's condition was getting worse and worse, Qin Xuan had no choice but to try his luck. He came behind Sun Quan, stretched out his hands and tried to use his internal energy to help him. My goodness, this hit directly crippled Sun Quan. Sun Quan spat out a mouthful of blood and quickly ate a peach to save his life. Good intentions lead to bad consequences? Otherwise, under normal circumstances, although Sun Quan vomited blood and was seriously injured, his reckless behavior was successfully stopped and Qin Xuan saved Sun Quan. But Sun Quan had the peach artifact card, which no one could have expected. As a result, the situation gradually shifted in an unpredictable direction. There is a saying in the martial arts world: break and then rebuild. Why does break and then rebuild make people stronger than before? It is because the meridians become wider and tougher in the process of breaking and repairing. Of course, breaking is easy, but repairing is difficult, so break and then rebuild is not so easy to happen. In an era, there can be one or two people who can do it, and they need constant adventures. Sun Quan is different. As long as he has peaches, he has the possibility to break and then stand up again. However, what Sun Quan really faced this time was not the traditional sense of destruction followed by construction. It turns out that there are blockages between meridians, otherwise there would not be the saying of connecting the run and do meridians. Some blockages between meridians are very small and can be easily connected, while some blockages between meridians are very strong. Therefore, the strength of a martial arts master can often be directly reflected by the number of meridians that are connected. Changxing Ju is a special method of bypassing the acquired and directly practicing the innate. When Guangchengzi wrote Changxing Ju, he probably didn't consider the problem of meridians because the meridians of the innate master are theoretically connected throughout the body, so his exercise route looks very strange to normal people. The routes in it are all unpopular and the meridians are very blocked. This leads to a problem. The more powerful a person's martial arts skills are, the greater the impact and damage to the meridians will be if they practice the Changxing Ju forcefully. Therefore, they dare not continue to practice. After all, once the skills are broken, not everyone can stand up again. Who wants to waste the martial arts that they have practiced with great difficulty? As for the innate masters, please, the innate masters are all the best in the world. After practicing to the innate level, they already have their own unique set of martial arts theories. How could they easily change to learn other martial arts? Those who hold this idea will never reach the innate level. As for those with weak martial arts, or those who start from scratch because their true chi is not strong enough and they can't break through the meridian obstacles on the power line, they can't practice normally. The above is the embarrassment that no one can learn the Changxing Ju for so many years. But Sun Quan is different. His martial arts skills are neither good nor bad. The impact of the true chi in his body is enough, and the damage to the meridians is not too great. In addition, even if it is damaged, it can be broken and then rebuilt, which makes Sun Quan have the possibility of success that others have never had. But Sun Quan also has a problem, that is, his skills are not deep enough and he is weak in the follow-up. Practicing martial arts is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will retreat. If you don't practice for a long time, some meridians that were originally opened may be blocked again. In other words, if the entire line cannot be connected in one breath, even if Sun Quan successfully breaks through one or two levels, what he has done is useless. Therefore, Qin Xuan's intervention has become an indispensable factor for Sun Quan's success. Coincidentally, Qin Xuan's Daozu Xinjing and Sun Quan's Shangqing Xinjing are not only Taoist exercises but also seem to come from the same vein. The true chi of the two can coexist. Otherwise, if it were someone else, they might not be able to help Sun Quan. Just like that, with the help of Qin Xuan, Sun Quan attacked the meridian checkpoints while eating peaches to repair himself. After a narrow escape, finally with a ding sound, a passage of words appeared on the character card in the spiritual world. The Secret of Immortality, Fragment, Level 1, the highest level of martial arts. Seeing this, Sun Quan smiled happily. Instantly he fainted from exhaustion and pain. Zhang Mo. Zhang Mo. Reality dividing line. Zhang Mo? Zhang Mo? What are you grinning about? Qin Chuan looked at Sun Quan holding the chopsticks he had used and suddenly smiled inexplicably, feeling quite uncomfortable. Sun Quan didn't care? But he did care, okay? Even if Sun Quan was just a child, Qin Chuan felt it was weird. Especially Sun Quan's smile. Qin Chuan, who had been hiding his gender, always thought that Sun Quan had discovered something. If Sun Quan had really figured it out, then his behavior at this moment. Bah! How could kids these days be so bad? Oh, sorry, I was just thinking of something. After Qin Chuan's reminder, Sun Quan quickly put away his joy and immediately recalled the route of Changshengju. Soon Sun Quan found that he really remembered it, and he remembered it very clearly, and he was overjoyed again. His method was effective. So Sun Quan didn't care about anything else, and in excitement he directly used the Let Me Think Twice skill for the second time today. He immediately went to learn the second chapter map. Chapter 67, Close Relationship. An hour passed quickly in the illusion, and when he returned to reality, Sun Quan immediately returned to his overjoyed state. That's right, he had successfully mastered the second picture of The Secret of Immortality, and because of the experience of the first picture, although the process this time was still not simple, it was much safer than the last time. Sun Quan believed that as long as he came a few more times and found the trick, he would definitely be able to reduce the damage to less than 3 peaches in the end. As long as he could achieve this goal, Sun Quan dared to officially practice in reality. The word martial arts fanatic is so appropriate to describe Sun Quan. Sun Quan has an extraordinary passion for martial arts, and he has a special yearning for it. To be honest, practicing the art of longevity in this self-abuse way will not cause real harm even in the illusion, but the pain Sun Quan feels is no less. The damage to the meridians is like continuous cramps, and there are more than one cramp. It takes Sun Quan an hour from the time he enters the illusion to the time he leaves it. Most people would never want to experience it a second time after experiencing it once. But Sun Quan is completely different. Not only did he take the initiative to experience it a second time, but he also followed it right after the first time. Even if he is the legendary masochist, he should take a break in the middle. It's not that Sun Quan doesn't feel pain, but the joy of successful practice has made him completely forget the pain. Zhang Mo. Zhang Mo. What on earth are you laughing at? Qin Chuan frowned. He just said he was thinking about something, but after blinking he was probably thinking about it again. What on earth is so ridiculous about me? No, brother Qin, don't think too much. I just feel inexplicably happy. Maybe I like your place too much. Well, I have decided that I will come to your place every day. The food you cook is very delicious. Sun Quan replied, his lips still unable to hide the joy. Qin Chuan's eyes widened. Have you decided? What on earth do you think this place is? You just come here without asking? Did you get Qin Chuan's consent? And from the tone of voice, you want to shamelessly come here for a meal. Young master, even if you want to experience life, there is no need to bother others, right? That's right, Qin Chuan is a very reasonable person. If Sun Quan really wants to come here for a meal, even if he only cooks some light food, Qin Chuan will at least cook 2 more dishes. Otherwise he will feel that the hospitality is not good enough and he can't show it off. So Sun Quan is not tossing him. I'm just worried that you'll feel bored alone. Sun Quan has always been thick-skinned. Don't worry, brother Qin, I won't eat your food for free. How about this? I'll be responsible for buying groceries every day and you just need to cook them. Sun Quan said. I'll just take the responsibility and do it, that's all? For a moment Qin Chuan didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. Sun Quan was stunned as if he had just realized Qin Chuan's attitude and said in astonishment. What? Doesn't brother Qin welcome me? If you feel it's disturbing, then forget it. Just pretend I never said anything. Sun Quan said quickly. Seeing Sun Quan's serious expression, Qin Chuan instantly softened his heart and said, Zhang Mo, how can I not welcome you to my place? It's just that I only know how to cook a few dishes. If you come here every day, I'm afraid you won't be used to the food. Sun Quan thought about it and realized that what Qin Chuan said made sense. He just wanted to find an excuse to come to Qin Chuan every day. But if he ate vegetables and tofu every day, Sun Quan really couldn't get used to it. Especially now that he was still growing up, Sun Quan didn't want to be laughed at for not meeting the height standard in the future. With a turn of his eyes, he suggested, "Then how about this, Brother Qin? You should continue to do what you do every day and don't change your original style. I will bring some ready-made food every day and you can eat it if you like it. If you don't like it, I will eat it alone. How about this?" "Okay." Qin Chuan shook his head and sighed. He felt that he would not be able to have a peaceful life recently. However, since Sun Quan took the initiative to find him, Qin Chuan did not reject it. At least he could get closer to Sun Quan and deepen cooperation. Moreover, Sun Quan, this little guy, knew too many secrets. Qin Chuan was relieved to be able to stay under his nose. "So why did you come to see me?" Qin Chuan finally asked the topic of today. He didn't believe that Sun Quan was someone who would visit him for no reason. "Oh right, I almost forgot something." Sun Quan screamed and said quickly, "Brother Qin, I came here this time to ask you to give me some advice." "Oh?" Qin Chuan smiled and asked curiously, "Do you also have times when you can't make up your mind? Is such that?" Sun Quan told Qin Chuan everything about Cai Yong's visit to him. "So Brother Qin, how do you think I should talk to Yang Xiu? If I want to duel in advance, I should at least find a suitable excuse." "Wait a minute, are you trying to say that it was Cai Yong who wanted to bring forward the literary duel between you and Yang Xiu?" Qin Chuan suddenly interrupted. "Cai Yong came to see me, it should be Cai Yong's idea, right?" Sun Quan said. Qin Chuan shook his head. "Otherwise, based on my understanding of Mr. Cai Yong, if he really has a reason, he will definitely say it directly. If it is a reason that is inconvenient to say directly, then he would rather not say it than use such means." Sun Quan was stunned and said in astonishment, "So this is entirely Cai Yong's own idea? Then what is her purpose?" The reason why he told Qin Chuan about this was just to find a suitable excuse for himself to appear here, but he didn't expect Qin Chuan to give him a completely different answer. Qin Chuan thought about it carefully but still couldn't find the answer, so he said, "I also find it hard to understand, but maybe it's just Cai Yong's personal reasons. We don't need to overinterpret it." "I guess so." Although Sun Quan was curious like Qin Chuan, he didn't take it too seriously. The most important thing Sun Quan was thinking about now was when Jin would die and when Dong Zhuo would come. "Then Brother Qin, what reason do you think I should use to find Yang Xiu?" Sun Quan asked. Qin Chuan pondered for a while and said, "Whenever an important person dies, a Buddhist meeting will be held in the White Horse Temple starting from the third day. It will last for several days. You can go to Yang Xiu and ask him to attend the meeting and pray for the world. Even if Yang Xiu doesn't believe you, he can't refuse you." "That's a good reason. Brother Qin, you're really good at it." Sun Quan gave Qin Chuan a thumbs up. That thing just happened yesterday and Sun Quan brought it up today, leaving no room for anyone to find any loopholes. Qin Chuan smiled slightly. "Don't think I'm helping you. The reason I'm bringing this up is that I want you to listen to the Buddhist lessons carefully, cleanse your mind and stop having bad thoughts in your head all day long." Sun Quan pouted and said unconvincedly, "Brother Qin, how can I have a head full of evil ideas? These ideas are all yours." "Okay. You want to fight?" Qin Chuan raised his hand and pretended to teach Sun Quan a lesson. No, isn't it okay that I was wrong?" Sun Quan surrendered immediately. Unconsciously, the relationship between the two has become much closer. Qin Chuan, who was not very worldly wise, probably didn't realize that he actually has a very serious weakness. Chapter 68, Emotional Feedback. Qin Chuan may not be the best in martial arts, but he is very sensitive. It is said that women are born with delicate minds, so Qin Chuan is definitely a woman among women. Just like Sun Quan's competitive spirit, ordinary people can never feel it. It is precisely because of this great advantage that Qin Chuan is quite emotional in dealing with people. He will treat others the way others treat him. If someone is hostile to Qin Xuan, then Qin Xuan will treat that person as an enemy and be on guard against him. If someone is warm on the surface but is just an acquaintance, then Qin Xuan will naturally respond with this attitude. Qin Xuan is like a player in an RPG game who can check the favorability of each NPC towards him. If he finds that an NPC has a negative favorability towards him, he will think, oh my god, this person wants to harm me. If he finds that an NPC has a favorability towards him of 50, he will think, well, this is just a passerby, not a teammate. Then one day when Qin Xuan finds that an NPC has a favorability towards him of more than 90? That's right, everything has its pros and cons, and Qin Xuan's greatest advantage may also be his greatest weakness. Why did Sun Quan's favorability towards Qin Xuan rise so quickly? Many times it all came from Sanxi's illusion. Just like the 2 times just now, a friend in need is a friend indeed. Both times Qin Xuan helped Sun Quan in times of crisis and his concern was not fake. Therefore, before coming, Sun Quan's favorability towards Qin Xuan might have been only 60 or 70, but after a moment his favorability rose to 10. It can be said that Sun Quan's affection for Qin Xuan has its own special reasons, but Qin Xuan is different. In Qin Xuan's eyes, the intersection between him and Sun Quan is far from the level of close friends. If it were someone else, they would only regard Sun Quan as an ordinary friend at most. As a result, because Qin Xuan saw Sun Quan's favorability, he subconsciously developed a closeness and trust in Sun Quan, and Qin Xuan's kindness to Sun Quan would continue to increase Sun Quan's favorability towards him. In this cycle, these two people seem to have a chemical reaction and they are attracted to each other at an almost incredible speed. That's why it's said that Qin Xuan is still young. This is Qin Xuan's first time out of the mountains. Apart from the brothers and sisters in Sihang Jingjai, Qin Xuan has never made friends with outsiders. He has no experience and naturally can't notice how rapidly his relationship with Sun Quan has progressed. Secondly, Qin Xuan showed himself as a man this time, so that in all these days Sun Quan is the only one who has a favorability of more than 90% for him. The young emperor doesn't count, he belongs to the brothers and sisters in Sihang Jingjai. Otherwise, once he changes into women's clothes, there will definitely be countless NPCs around him who have a favorability of more than 90% for him. In that case, Qin Xuan will immediately realize the mistakes he has always made in treating people. If someone is malicious towards you, you should be on guard against them, but this does not mean that if someone is kind to you, you must treat them as friends. Friends can be divided into good teachers and bad friends. Once there are more choices, Qin Xuan will no longer judge by emotion but will choose rationally. That a guy like Sun Quan, who is playful, thick-skinned and profit-seeking, will definitely not be in Qin Xuan's eyes. Just like making friends in school is very casual but having many requirements, when growing up Sun Quan by chance took the first come first served and became Qin Xuan's first friend other than his relatives. After Sun Quan went to Yang Xiu with the reason given by Qin Xuan, and things went more smoothly than he imagined. Because Yang Xiu didn't ask the reason at all, he agreed directly. Of course, the premise is that Sun Quan can convince Cai Yong. Yang Xiu's meaning was very clear, that is, whether it was advanced or postponed, it was all up to you, Sun Quan, to avoid making excuses after losing, saying that Yang Xiu was unreasonable and took advantage of others' misfortune. Yang Xiu's arrogant attitude only made Sun Quan laugh and say, "You can be arrogant, but you won't be able to do that for many days." Just when Sun Quan thought he had completed his mission and was about to return home, he suddenly thought of a question. Originally, Sun Quan thought that Cai Yong came to him because of Cai Yong's arrangement, so there was no need for Sun Quan to go to Cai Yong again, because Cai Yong had already said that she would persuade her father. But after Qin Xuan's reminder, Sun Quan realized that this was probably just Cai Yong's personal intention, so Sun Quan had no reason not to go to Cai Yong. "Oh, I accidentally took on such a troublesome job." Sun Quan shook his head inside. "But who says that's an idol? It was just a simple matter of running errands and earning a favor from Cai Yong." Sun Quan didn't think he was at a loss. So Sun Quan excitedly rushed to Cai Yong's residence. It was a busy day. West of the city Cai Mansion. "Sun Quan wants to see you?" After receiving the message from the servant, Cai Yong looked at Cai Yong, who was standing beside him. "Yenner, you seem to have gone out just now?" "That's right, father. I asked Sun Quan to come." Cai Yong admitted it directly. She knew that once Sun Quan explained his intention, Cai Yong would know the whole story. Of course, Cai Yong already knew it now. "Hey, you are." Cai Yong shook his head inside. Anyway, please invite the person in first. Outside the door. Led by the servant, Sun Quan entered Cai's mansion and his eyelids twitched instantly. Cai's mansion is very big. It is a luxury house in the west of the city. The decoration is very elegant. It is a place where intellectuals live. To use Sun Quan's catchphrase, it is very high class. Of course, this kind of thing will not attract the attention of a vulgar person like Sun Quan. The real reason why Sun Quan's eyelids twitched was that in his spiritual world the card of stealing kept flashing. Oh my god! Is this the Imperial Palace? No, judging from the density alone, at least the palace that Sun Quan went to had far fewer treasures than Cai Yong's house. I heard that Cai Yong's house had a collection of countless precious books. Could it be that it was full of beautiful women and golden houses? In the past, when Sun Quan had nothing to do in Jiangdong, he would definitely run here every day to see what treasures he could get. What a pity the skill of think twice is more precious to Sun Quan than anything else, but he can no longer use it casually in such a place. In this way, Sun Quan resisted the urge to steal and entered the main hall, where he met the most powerful writer of the time, Cai Yong. This was a historic meeting. While Cai Yong was carefully sizing up Sun Quan was also sizing up Cai Yong. Cai Yong, judging from his facial features alone, was not handsome at all and even a little ugly. It was no wonder that MokBhaiMJ had an average appearance, but Cai Yong gave people a very harmonious feeling, very natural. It was like a cherry tree. Compared with the beauty of the cherry blossoms, the trunk itself was ugly, but even with such an ugly trunk, no matter what kind of flowers grew on its branches, people would feel natural, comfortable and justified when looking at it, and would not think that the tree was not worthy of the flowers. Could this be the aura brought by the two words Cai Yong? Sun Quan scratched his head. Suddenly Cai Yong's eyes flashed with a sharp light and Sun Quan felt as if he was pierced and stood still. But in the blink of an eye, Cai Yong's face returned to its kind look as if nothing had happened. Expert? Sun Quan frowned. That didn't seem like the case. Cai Yong looked unsteadily walking, and he didn't seem to be a martial artist. Chapter 69, not much, just a few cars. Could it be that Cai Yong was hiding something very well? Was he pretending that he didn't know martial arts? Although this possibility cannot be ruled out, Sun Quan thinks it is unlikely. Human energy is limited. Cai Yong has made such great achievements in literature and art. If his martial arts skills are so strong that people cannot detect them, then is there any need for human life? Moreover, Cai Yong is a shrewd man and may be able to hide it deeply, but MokBhaiMJ is so young, can she also hide it? MokBhaiMJ obviously does not know martial arts. If Cai Yong is really a martial arts master, why doesn't he even teach his own daughter? So was everything that just happened just an illusion? Putting aside his thoughts, Sun Quan immediately stepped forward and saluted. Students, Sun Quan greets Master Cai. Young master, please stand up. Cai Yong was completely unassuming. He personally stepped forward to help Sun Quan up and praised him. I've always heard that the second young master of the Sun family is a dragon among men. Seeing him today, he is indeed extraordinary. No, I'm just a local snake in Jiangdong, far from a dragon. Sun Quan said modestly. Cai Yong narrowed his eyes and stopped talking about this topic. After Sun Quan was seated and tea was served, Cai Yong took the initiative to say, in fact, Mr. Sun, I already know the purpose of your visit. This is all just my daughter's nonsense. You don't have to take it seriously. Nonsense? Why would Miss Cai say that? Sun Quan pretended to be puzzled. What does my coming here have to do with Miss Cai? This made MokBhaiMJ, who was standing by, both amused and moved. It was certainly not easy for Sun Quan to take the initiative to help her hide it, but don't you look at who is in front of you? That's Cai Yong, the smartest man in the world. Do you really think you can hide it from him? Young master Sun, I have explained everything to father. MokBhaiMJ said with a smile. Sun Quan's face froze. Hey! That's too much. How can I step down like this? It's embarrassing. Do you have any emotional intelligence? So Sun Quan gritted his teeth and insisted. Explain? Explain what? Miss Cai, why don't I understand what you are saying? Haha, then I wonder what Mr. Sun is here for. Cai Yong laughed and took the initiative to help Sun Quan avoid the topic. Oh, it's like this. I plan to go to the White Horse Temple to worship Buddha in a few days, and I would like to invite MokBhaiMJ to go with me. Sun Quan replied. He was talking to Cai Yong, but his eyes never left MokBhaiMJ. It was obvious that Sun Quan was upset. You said he was kind enough to help, but MokBhaiMJ revealed the secret in advance. How could the usually stingy Sun Quan get over it? Therefore Sun Quan deliberately did not mention the postponement of the duel and instead talked about other things in order to anger MokBhaiMJ. MokBhaiMJ understood Sun Quan's intention and immediately begged for mercy. Seeing this, Sun Quan was too embarrassed to pursue her further and continued with the previous topic, saying, "But it takes more than 1 or 2 days to study Buddhism. I suddenly remembered that the duel with Yang Xiu happened to be on those days and there was some conflict between the two sides, so I wanted to discuss with Master Cai to see if we can change the date and move the duel a few days earlier." Mr. Sun is also interested in Buddhism? Cai Yong asked. Yes. Sun Quan answered subconsciously. Nonsense, if he was not interested, why would he go to study Buddhism? It doesn't make sense logically. However, just after he finished speaking, Sun Quan felt bad. Sure enough, he saw MokBhaiMJ constantly winking at him. Unfortunately, it was too late for them to react. They heard Cai Yong ask, "Then I wonder what you think of Buddhism?" The test is here. If Sun Quan can't answer well, his reason for visiting Buddhism will not be justified. Sun Quan doesn't know Cai Yong well and doesn't know whether Cai Yong will reject him because of this. But judging from MokBhaiMJ's reaction, this question should be very important. In the past, Sun Quan would have used the skill of "let me think twice," but now he can only bite the bullet and go ahead. Well, although Buddhism has only been spread in the Central Plains for a short time, I think it is a very good sect. Sun Quan chose a very moderate statement. It's not that Sun Quan didn't understand Zen sayings like "there is no Bodhi tree," but he felt that saying it in front of Cai Yong would be digging his own grave. At his current age, it is best to be conventional. Anyway, the answer here has nothing to do with right or wrong, nor does it have anything to do with Cai Yong's preferences. The key is to demonstrate one's understanding and views of Buddhism and to make Cai Yong believe that Sun Quan really wants to study Buddhism. Oh? What's right about that? Cai Yong continued to ask. Buddhism emphasizes cause and effect. Doing good things will bring good rewards and doing bad things will bring bad consequences. This doctrine can lead people to do good and prevent people from doing evil, so I think Buddhism is pretty good. Sun Quan replied. Mr. Sun's views are indeed unique. Cai Yong exclaimed and then asked, if Mr. Sun were in power, would he vigorously promote Buddhism? Of course. Sun Quan answered without thinking. Just kidding, Buddhism is one of the ruler's favorite religions. No matter what religion, it cannot restrain certain people, but for the general public it can make people do more good deeds. The key is to do less bad things and reduce the crime rate. This is already the most stable rule. There is a reason why Buddhism has been passed down for so many dynasties in China. How to promote it? Cai Yong asked again. Because of the Yellow Turban Rebellion, Taoism is weak now. People's faith has collapsed and people all over the world are living in misery. This is the best time to promote Buddhism. As long as we give alms regularly, occasionally see a miracle, and then vigorously promote it by catching a few typical examples of good being rewarded with good and evil being punished with evil, as long as there is official support, Buddhism will flourish within a few years. Sun Quan replied. After Buddhism flourishes, how do you plan to deal with Taoism and other religions? Cai Yong asked immediately, not giving Sun Quan any time to think. Because Cai Yong asked so urgently, Sun Quan probably couldn't think too much, but MokBhaiMJ, who was standing by, gradually discovered the clues. The focus of Cai Yong's questions was not on Sun Quan's understanding of Buddhism at all. Cai Yong seemed to be testing Sun Quan's style of doing things. Taoism as a traditional religion certainly cannot be abandoned, but there is no need to promote it vigorously either. Taoism should only be practiced by a small number of people. In fact, both Buddhism and Taoism can share common myths and legends. We can coexist and even integrate to some extent, said Sun Quan. So Mr. Sun thinks it's better to have 100 schools of thought contend? Instead of respecting Confucianism alone? Cai Yong suddenly said. Even though Sun Quan realized it late, he did not dare to answer this question easily. Ha ha ha, I made a mistake. Cai Yong laughed. I heard that you are well read and have learned a lot. It just so happens that I have some complicated books at home that no one reads. It would be a waste to keep them. How about giving them to you? Happiness came too suddenly and Sun Quan was stunned. My goodness, this is Cai Yong's collection of books. Just look at the stealing in the spiritual world. Cai Yong gave away something. Could it be an ordinary thing? Even if he sold it. A hamamut ba good and good. Really? Give it to me? Sun Quan stammered. If someone is too nice to you, he is either a traitor or a thief. Will pie really fall from the sky? But Cai Yong is such a person, he shouldn't be so good as to plot against a child like me. Could it be that I suddenly let out my turtle spirit, which made Cai Yong appreciate his talent? Of course, books should be placed in the place where they are most valuable. Cai Yong smiled and said, Yener, I will pack it up some other day and you can deliver it to Master Sun in person. No, don't bother, Miss Cai, I can get it myself. Sun Quan said hurriedly. Cai Yong smiled. I'm afraid you won't be able to get it in one go. If I can't get it in one time, then try twice. Wait, are there a lot? Sun Quan suddenly reacted. Not much, just a few cars. What? Chapter 70, The Emperor's Appearance. Cai Mansion. After Sun Quan left in a daze. Dad, what are you thinking? Cai Wenji immediately asked her father. She had said long ago that Cai Yong valued his collection of books very much. It was reasonable for Cai Wenji to take them away before, but why was he giving them away now? That was a gift. Not just a loan to Sun Quan. As for saying that Cai Yong really had a love for talent, that's a joke. Cai Yong had accepted so many disciples over the years, how could he have a love for talent? Why didn't I see him giving books to others casually before? Even if he did, it would be one or two at most. How could he give books on such a large scale? And he decided on it in such a short time. Is Sun Quan really that reliable? Yener, I know what you are thinking. Cai Yong said I don't want to hide it from you, but you must not tell anyone what I say next. No one understand. Cai Yong was extremely serious. Cai Wenji's face straightened. No. Then Cai Yong whispered. I just saw that Sun Quan, he actually looks like an emperor. What? Cai Wenji was shocked. Cai Wenji believed in her father more than anyone else. Whatever Cai Yong said was true. So Cai Wenji couldn't believe that Sun Quan, the cute boy just now, would rebel and become the emperor in the future? Otherwise, how could a person with a different surname have the appearance of an emperor? Then Dad, you still? Cai Wenji couldn't help but ask, didn't you say before that Yuan Shu also had the potential to be an emperor and told me to try not to associate with the Yuan family to avoid getting into trouble? What's going on now? Cai Yong shook his head. The two are different. Although Sun Quan and Yuan Shu both have the potential to be emperors, Yuan Shu has the potential to die young. His end is self-evident. That's why I told you to stay away from the Yuan family before. In Cai Yong's view, Yuan Shu was the type who rebelled and became emperor but quickly failed. Such a guy will definitely be executed in the future, so he must completely cut off his relationship with the Yuan family. However, Cai Yong miscalculated for this. At that time, Cai Wenji was definitely a favored daughter of heaven in the capital, and young talents from major families were vying for her. As the Yuan family was one of the best families in the world, how could Cai Yong dare to refuse once they came to propose marriage? Therefore, in order to prevent such a possibility, Cai Yong hurriedly found a marriage for Cai Wenji, wanting to marry Cai Wenji out of the capital, but he didn't expect that it would harm Cai Wenji in the end. It was for this reason that Cai Yong felt that he owed Cai Wenji something, so he loved this daughter the most. Dad, do you mean that Sun Quan has a long life? Cai Wenji trembled, and in an instant her lips turned purple with fright. What does it mean that a person has the appearance of an emperor, has a different surname, and will live a long life? Although it is possible that Sun Quan in his 70s or 80s rebelled and proclaimed himself emperor and then failed, considering the current state of the Han dynasty, the shaky rule of the Liu family, and Yuan Shu's previous declaration of emperorship. Oh my God! Is the Han dynasty going to fall? And Sun Quan will become the new emperor after the dynasty changes? In this era there were very few people who did not have the idea of imperial power, let alone a weak woman like Cai Yong. It can be imagined that when Cai Yong saw Sun Quan again in the future, it would be good enough if she did not tremble, and she would probably even speak in a much more humble voice. Regardless of what happens in the future, at least at this moment Cai Yong has lost the ability to think. That's right. Cai Yong gave Cai Yong a positive answer. So I just tried to inquire about Sun Quan's thoughts. I found that he has a unique way of thinking and is unconventional. And judging from his views on Buddhism, he is indeed a talent for ruling. The Sun family is a representative of military strategists, and Sun Quan has the heart to integrate cultures, so I want to entrust those books to him. Cai Yong was a true scholar. Although he understood the significance of Confucianism, he could not agree with it. The 100 schools of thought were the crystallization of the wisdom of the predecessors. How could they be abandoned? Although many schools of thought have been lost due to the burning of books and burying of scholars, Cai Yong could not bear to see these cultures and ideas disappear further. So in those years Cai Yong traveled all over the country and accepted countless poor students, most of whom were descendants of the 100 schools of thought. While teaching his students, Cai Yong summarized the thoughts of the 100 schools of thought and collected the remaining books, and finally restored the 100 schools of thought to most of its heyday. However, Cai Yong could only do so much. His actions were always criticized by the government, and he had no choice but to resign from office. Although the books were barely saved, Cai Yong never dared to pass on the thoughts of the 100 schools of thought again. Until today, Cai Yong met Sun Quan and finally found someone who could really entrust his sensitive books to. Books should be placed in the place where they are most valuable. I believe that even if Sun Quan does not vigorously promote the thoughts of the 100 schools of thought, he will not let the culture of the 100 schools of thought be lost. At least Sun Quan will cherish these books, and at least he has the ability to protect these books. And it's not just books. Yenner, you have had a lot of misfortunes in your life. I hope to borrow the Emperor's power to help you change your destiny. Cai Yong looked at Cai Yong and suddenly said, Ah. Ah. Cai Yong was stunned for a moment and finally came to her senses. Dad, what do you want to do? I don't know either. Cai Yong shook his head and sighed. If you get involved with someone like this, you will never know what is right or wrong. Since ancient times, being close to an emperor has been accompanied by countless opportunities and dangers. You may have been a pawn on the emperor's road to becoming a pawn, or you may have become a founding hero and be cursed for generations. It is undeniable that following the emperor closely is indeed the best way to change your fate. But since it is called changing fate, the current numerology does not count. What will happen after the change? You have to read your physiognomy again after the change. Cai Yong can't see through it now. So Yenner, I hope you can make your own decision this time. Cai Yong said to Cai Yong, I can only say that Sun Quan is worth dealing with now, but none of us knows what he will become in the future. Dad, I'm just a girl. How can I date a man like that just because I want to? Cai Yong smiled bitterly. Haha, then who was it that called people here without any courtesy before? Cai Yong laughed. Cai Yong blushed and said hurriedly, I didn't know that before, but now I don't dare to wave at him anymore. Is there any difference? Having the appearance of an emperor does not mean he is born to be an emperor. Cai Yong said, Yenner, don't be too self-deprecating. Some things are not pressure, but from another perspective they may be honors. Look at the Grand Tutor Yuan Wei. Why does he want to be the emperor's teacher so much? Not everyone is qualified to give orders to the future emperor. Knowing is one thing, being able to do it is another. Everyone knows that you can't be nervous during exams, but how many people can really do it? This is simply uncontrollable. Dad! You shouldn't have told me this. Cai Yong's face was bitter. I tell you this because I hope you can find the right balance in your heart. Cai Yong sighed in his heart. Chapter 71, The Beginning of Ambition. Later that day, Sun Quan officially moved into Yuan Shu's house. He didn't have many things and followers, so he could move in with just his luggage. This busy day finally ended. In fact, moving to Yuan Shu's house and living under someone else's roof had many inconveniences. Sun Quan could no longer be as free and do whatever he wanted as usual. After all, this was the home of his future daughter-in-law. Even if Sun Quan was just pretending he should show some performance, right? He couldn't let Yuan Shu regret it just after the marriage was decided. That would not only bring shame to Sun Quan but also to his Sun family. However, although there was less freedom and more restrictions, Sun Quan moved here without hesitation. On the one hand, he did not want to offend Yuan Shu's kindness, but the bigger reason was that Yuan Shu's place was indeed safe. Even if Dong Zhuo took over Luoyang later, judging from the fact that Yuan Shu was able to leave Beijing normally in history, Sun Quan should at least be able to escape Luoyang safely with Yuan Shu. Therefore, for the sake of his own personal safety for now, Yuan Shu was really a thigh that Sun Quan needs to hold tightly. After entering Yuan Shu's home and learning about Yuan Shu's schedule, Sun Quan discovered that Yuan Shu was really hardworking and there was a reason for his success. It was true that Yuan Shu was jealous of Yuan Shao, but not everyone could see the efforts Yuan Shu made to surpass Yuan Shao. History often only considers the final success or failure but ignores that Yuan Shu was famous in history and dared to claim the throne, which showed that he was already a top figure in this era. Everyone has advantages and disadvantages. Whether he succeeds or not, it can only be said that Yuan Shu lacked a little chance. On the first day when Sun Quan moved into Yuan's house, he unexpectedly met his future wife, Miss Yuan. Her full name was Yuan and her nickname was Yuan. As her name suggests, she was chubby. Of course, at this age, baby fat looked quite cute. This made Sun Quan somewhat relieved. Regardless of how the girl would change in the future, at least Yuan Shu did not cheat him on this matter. I don't know if it's because the two are young, the family didn't have too many concerns, not only let the two meet but also let them get along and play. Miss Yuan's age is older than Sun Shangxiang and slightly younger than Sun Quan, but the girl developed earlier and looked like she was 1 or 2 years older than Sun Quan. Sun Quan thought that as a young man in Kyoto he had no rivals among his peers. Isn't it easy to make a little girl happy and make her admire him from an early age? Unfortunately, he was wrong, and he was quite wrong. During this first meeting, it was not Sun Quan who trained Miss Yuan but Miss Yuan who thoroughly trained Sun Quan. Night. It was very rare for Sun Quan to read by candlelight. Why? Sun Quan suddenly sighed. He had been reading for a long time but hadn't gotten much into it. His current state was even worse than usual. Sun Quan rolled up the book, walked outside, looked at the starry sky and murmured. You said that as the 22nd generation grandson I should also have noble blood in my veins, right? Although there seemed to be no one around, Sun Quan knew that Zhu Mao must be in the dark. Even though Zhu Mao was a quiet person, he was at least a very qualified listener. Who would have thought that after meeting Miss Yuan today, Sun Quan actually felt inferior? Not to mention others, even Sun Quan himself could not have thought of such a thing. As a good young man of the new era, as a modern man who has seen everything in this era, Sun Quan has a sense of superiority from the beginning. Whether it is a peerless beauty or a prince in Sun Quan's eyes, isn't it just immortal? What's so great about it? I have seen many peerless beauties. Have you ever seen a train or an airplane? As for the emperor, well, it is indeed high above, but Sun Quan believes that he will be an emperor in the future. This kind of pressure from identity has never been able to really scare Sun Quan. Inferiority complex? Impossible. To be honest, Sun Quan was not arrogant. He felt that he was well educated. I remember when I first arrived in the capital, others laughed at Sun Quan for being a soldier. Although he was from a noble family, he was a vulgar person. At that time, Sun Quan sneered and believed that the bigger the fist, the more truth there is. It was not until today, when he met Miss Yuan, that Sun Quan realized for the first time what he was missing. I don't know if it's because of the TV series, but Sun Quan's subconscious impression of the young lady is that she is willful, bossy, unreasonable and unreasonable. Now it seems that this view is ridiculous. The reason why nobles are nobles is not just because they are rich and powerful. Look at the He family today. There is the Empress Dowager He and the General He Jin, but how many people really regard them as nobles? No matter how much they pretend to be, a butcher is still a butcher. Without the foundation of several or even dozens of generations, it is impossible to naturally produce nobility. The Jiangdong boy looks at the sky from a well. How ironic. If you have never really seen the vastness of the sky, how can you know that you are looking at the sky from a well? At least at this moment Sun Quan finally realized that even as a modern man there were still things he had never encountered. It was the first time that Sun Quan saw such a well-educated and generous woman with elegant manners and natural conversation. This was a kind of nobility engraved in her bones. Deliberately showing off your advantages often makes people hate you. Some people who seem to be low-key are actually showing off. This person sees my low profile while he has good vision. This person doesn't see anything. Haha, low-class person, do you really think I'm the same as you? People with this mentality are basically the so-called nouveau riche. But Miss Yuan was different. No matter what she did or said, Sun Quan would never hate her because she was just like that. Just like facing a beggar, whether you despise or pity him, it may hurt his self-esteem, but Miss Yuan would give the beggar enough respect. It was not because she was a saint or compassionate, but because she was so polite to everyone. This time Sun Quan really saw the gap. Otherwise, how could he who always skipped classes take the initiative to pick up the book now? It's funny to say that Sun Quan used to think that Miss Yuan had accumulated blessings for several lifetimes for this marriage, but now he's suddenly worried that he was not worthy of her. Are you really feeling inferior? Sun Quan shook his head and suddenly smiled. I heard that behind every successful man there is an outstanding woman. The ancients were not lying to me. Zhu Mao? Which ancient person said this? It seems like we should consider other things and stop playing around. On this day Sun Quan finally had a real goal for the first time besides the martial arts he longed for. Perhaps he would never have the noble background to match it in his entire life, so he could only make do with hegemony. Chapter 72. Why didn't he die? After making up his mind, Sun Quan immediately changed from passively following the crowd to actively riding the wind and waves. He returned to the house, took out the pen, ink, paper and inkstone and wrote a letter in 2 strokes. Zhu Mao, you must deliver this letter to Changsha and give it to my father overnight, the sooner the better. Sun Quan ordered Zhu Mao. But second, young master. Zhu Mao hesitated. Sun Jian kept him here to protect Sun Quan. If he left, what would happen to Sun Quan? If he handed it over to someone else, what would he say if something went wrong? Don't worry, I'm in the Yuan family, nothing will happen. Sun Quan said with a serious face, this letter is very important, only you and I can trust it. It must not fall into the hands of others or be seen by others. If something unexpected happens, it's better to destroy it. Zhu Mao's eyes fixed and he took the letter from Sun Quan very carefully. Clear. Then it disappeared into the night. Looking at the direction where Zhu Mao left, Sun Quan stood in a daze. He didn't know whether his action was right or wrong. If this letter had really been delivered to Sun Jian in time, history might have changed. By then, would the world still be the 3 kingdoms that Sun Quan was familiar with? Sun Quan might have lost his prophetic advantage. However, Sun Quan did not regret it. Changing history was something Sun Quan had already decided. He couldn't just watch his father and his elder brother die easily. Since history would definitely be intervened by Sun Quan, what difference would it make if it happened earlier or later? But in this way Sun Quan and his elder brother Sun Tzu might compete with each other in the future. However, the world hasn't been conquered yet, so why think so much? Let's wait until the future to worry about it. Putting his thoughts aside, Sun Quan returned to the house. It was almost midnight. Today I had to think about my skills for the last time. Sun Quan was ready to try to practice the secret of immortality without any help. No matter how much Sun Quan trusted Qin Xuan was an outsider after all, and there were various uncertainties. As long as there were outsiders involved, no matter how perfect Sun Quan's simulation in the Sansi illusion was, there was a possibility of error. Therefore, what Sun Quan really had to do was to successfully practice the Changxing Ju without any help. This was an attempt, and as expected, Sun Quan ultimately failed. Sure enough, your skills are still not deep enough, Sun Quan muttered to himself. But if you continue to practice Changxing Heart Sutra, when your skills are deep enough, you will face the embarrassment of causing greater damage to the acupoints. The greater the damage, the more peaches are needed to repair the meridians. Sun Quan only has 5 cards in total, and no matter how much he saves, it may not be enough. It would be great if there was some item that could quickly restore energy or even instantly restore energy. Sun Quan thought for a moment and remembered that there seemed to be something called the Evil Emperor's Relic in this world. The Evil Emperor's Relic is said to be an object from outer space. It has a very magical property, which is that it can store the true essence of a martial artist. This thing was obtained by the leader of the Xieji sect, and then every generation of evil emperors would inject their life's strength into it before they died, so it was called the Evil Emperor's Relic. They just hope that in the future there will be an evil emperor who can absorb the power inside so as to unify the martial arts world and become invincible. As long as he can find the evil emperor's relics, no matter whether there is true essence in it, now Sun Quan can inject his own skills into it when he is free. When the time is right, he can use it to restore his energy and then practice the secret of immortality. Only. Sun Quan finally shook his head inside. It was already very difficult for him to find the Changsheng Ju. How could he find the evil emperor's relics in a short time? What if he couldn't find it in his lifetime? Would he never practice the Changsheng Ju again? Therefore it would be better to practice martial arts honestly. It doesn't matter if the meridians are damaged. As long as he doesn't die, even if the peaches are used up in a short time with the legendary healing and repairability of the Changsheng Ju, Sun Quan doesn't need to worry too much about his health. At worst, he can find a deserted place to retreat for a few months. Sun Quan doesn't believe that the world will stop turning without him for a few months. So, taking advantage of his excitement, Sun Quan practiced the Shangqing Heart Sutra more diligently. The next day. Just one day after attending the class, the Emperor's class started again. As expected, only some insignificant people died and all the mechanisms seemed to be back on track. Sun Quan used his skill once and entered the palace and finally returned safely. Nothing happened. On this day, maybe it was because he witnessed the bloody court struggle for the first time, the Emperor was much quieter than usual, and as for the Prince of Chunlu, he didn't come to class at all because of illness. After leaving the palace, Sun Quan followed Qin Xuan to his home and used the second let me think 3 times skill to learn the third chapter of Shangxing Ju. Just like yesterday, Sun Quan kept a skill for emergency. Although Sun Quan now seems to have the card creating something out of nothing, he can use up the skill directly. But firstly, Changxing Ju has been regarded as a sure thing by Sun Quan, and he doesn't need to take risks just to get it 1 or 2 days in advance. Secondly, compared to using creating something out of nothing as a skill, Sun Quan now prefers to use creating something out of nothing as a peach, so this card should be kept until Sun Quan really practices Changxing Ju in reality. Brother Qin, after entering the palace today, I suddenly thought of a question. After finishing the work, Sun Quan suddenly said, Qin Chuan, oh? Tell me about it. Sun Quan leaned closer and whispered, Tell me, why is Prince Chunlu okay? The dispute between Empress Dowager He and Empress Dowager Dong was ultimately a dispute between Emperor Shaodi Lu Bian and Prince of Chunlu Lu Xie for the throne. Empress Dowager He did not hesitate to harm Empress Dowager Dong in order to ensure that her son could secure the throne. In this case, why not take the opportunity to get rid of Prince of Chunlu as well, to eliminate the trouble forever? In fact, everyone knows about this matter, there is no need to hide it. Who dares to talk nonsense about his He family now? As for saying that Prince Chunlu is still young? Are you kidding? Are there big and small palace struggles? Over the years, Empress Dowager He has killed many sons of her rivals in the palace. It doesn't make sense that she can't do it when it comes to Prince Chunlu. Zheng Mo. Qin Xuan frowned. I understand what you mean, and I know you are smart, but you shouldn't think about this kind of question. Chinese people, especially those at the top, always insist on having a legitimate reason for everything they do, even if it is just an excuse, even if others know it is just an excuse, but they cannot reveal it. Once the propriety is lost, people will only see profit. In the smallest case, it will cause the princes to compete with each other only for profit, and in the biggest case, it will even make the world indifferent and the people no longer simple and honest. Therefore, Queen Mother Dong could only have died of illness. Therefore, after Dong Chong was destroyed, Yuan Wei would help He Jin to implicate him in the court, giving He Jin a legitimate reason to attack. Therefore, Prince Chunlu is still alive. The prince who lost his backing was no longer a prince. Although Empress Dowager He also wanted to kill Prince Chunlu, the overall situation had been decided and there was no rush. The normal practice was to send Prince Chunlu out of the palace after a while and then let him die outside after a while. In this way, the face of etiquette and morality would not be torn. Sun Quan was smart and Qin Chuan was not surprised to ask such a question, but Sun Quan's question made Qin Chuan very unhappy because it represented that Sun Quan, at least the current Sun Quan, was a profit seeker who only looked at the results. In order to achieve his goals he could do whatever it took, ignore morality and even risk the world's disapproval. Otherwise how could Sun Quan feel surprised by such a matter of course? Why? It seems that not only the emperor needs correction but Zheng Mo also needs correction. Qin Chuan rubbed his brows. He felt that he had more and more headaches recently. Fortunately, as long as he held on for a few more days, someone in the dormitory would come to help him. Qin Chuan didn't know at this time that on that day there was another person who asked the same question as Sun Quan. Chapter 73 Dongzhuo. Somewhere outside Luoyang City. Li Ru, why didn't Queen Mother he just kill Prince Chunlu as well? Standing in front of Li Ru was a burly man with a group of sinister-looking warriors. This man was Li Ru's boss, the current governor of Hadong Dongzhuo. My lord, maybe they think a child is not important enough. Li Ru bowed slightly, as elegant as ever. Haha, I didn't expect that Queen Mother he is still so naive after fighting in the palace for so many years. Dongzhuo laughed loudly, his voice magnificent, as if he was not worried at all about being discovered that they were having a secret meeting here. Li Ru followed with a smile. If we weren't naive we wouldn't have had a chance. Okay, let's stop talking nonsense. Dongzhuo put away his smile. You asked me to come here urgently yesterday saying that the situation had changed. What was that for? It's like this. Li Ru also hurriedly talked about the business, saying for some unknown reason Sun Quan suddenly brought forward his duel with Yang Xiu and our original plan was disrupted. What? Dongzhuo's face changed drastically. Damn Sun family, did they find out something? It's not that Dongzhuo thinks highly of the Sun family, the key is that he is now guilty. Impossible. Li Ru shook his head, his tone was extremely firm. Our plan has always been kept absolutely secret. Even if someone has discovered some clues, it would only be the forces that have direct contact with us. Over the years the Sun family has been far away from the court and can be regarded as an absolute periphery. To put it bluntly, if even the Sun family knows our plan, then the whole world should know it. That makes sense. Dongzhuo nodded. After listening to Li Ru's analysis he finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, he was confused and couldn't help cursing that damn kid. Why is he messing around for no reason? When I succeed I will destroy his Sun family first. After cursing, Dongzhuo finally thought about his business again. So what day was the duel moved forward to? Tomorrow. Li Ru said in a low voice. Tomorrow? Dongzhuo's eyes widened. Time was so tight, wouldn't it mean that he wouldn't be able to prepare at all? Why didn't you just state this in the letter yesterday? Dongzhuo said angrily. Li Ru replied calmly as always. My lord, it is precisely because of the urgency of the time that we cannot explain. Otherwise, once you hesitate we will have no time to discuss, and if we miss this opportunity we will never have another chance. Dongzhuo narrowed his eyes and stared at Li Ru. Li Ru, you are not leaving me any way out. Indeed, the original plan was suddenly disrupted and the preparations were not sufficient. Once the opportunity was missed, Dongzhuo might have given up. But Li Ru's move was to force Dongzhuo to take action. Although Li Ru saved the opportunity, the risk was also increased. Moreover, Dongzhuo was not given time to consider and he had to make a decision in an instant. You know, once the arrow is shot there is no turning back. Li Ru bowed. My lord, we are on the same boat. We share the same fate. When a person reaches a certain position it is no longer a question of whether he or she will move forward, because there will always be someone behind you pushing you. No matter whether you really want to be an emperor or not, others want to be a founding father. Those who do great things do not pay attention to small details. How could Dongzhuo not understand Li Ru's thoughts? Ever since he appointed Li Ru, Dongzhuo knew that this day would come. What is the probability of success? Dongzhuo asked the key question directly. He was a utilitarian who only cared about the results. 70%. Li Ru replied. Dongzhuo raised his eyebrows. I remember you told me it was 70% at the beginning. Now the plan has been disrupted and the 10% has not changed? At the beginning our biggest problem was how to persuade the 10 attendants to kill He Jin. After Empress Dowager Dong was killed, the 10 attendants would inevitably worry about themselves, but this sense of urgency usually only lasts for 3 to 5 days. Within 3 to 5 days the 10 attendants will do anything when they are desperate. After 3 to 5 days they will find that He Jin has not yet attacked them and they may not dare to do some things out of luck. Li Ru explained, "This is why I said that there is only a 70% chance of success. Tomorrow the time is exactly within 3 days, so in this regard our probability of success has increased compared to before?" Dong Zhuo said. Li Ru nodded. "That's right. But on the other hand, because of the tight time and insufficient preparation, it will take at least 2 days for our main army to come from Hedong. The lack of manpower is the biggest problem at present. At this point the probability of success is reduced. Overall it should still be maintained at 70%. Li Ru said. 70%? Haha, Li Ru, don't bluff me. Dong Zhuo suddenly laughed. It's still 70%, but before, if I failed, the worst that could happen is that I could go back to where I came from. But now if I fail I will be doomed. Li Ru raised his eyes and asked Dong Zhuo. On one hand you can go back to the starting point and on the other hand you can be doomed forever. What will you choose, my lord? Ha ha. Of course the choice is eternal damnation. Dong Zhuo said loudly. Li Ru curled his lips. My lord is wise. Looking at the many heroes in the world today, the reason why Li Ru chose Dong Zhuo was because Dong Zhuo dared to take risks and dared to use him. Tomorrow the duel between Sun Quan and Yang Xiu will be a rare literary event in Beijing in recent years. Cai Yong will be involved in the judging. It can be said that many big figures in Beijing will go to watch. Yuan Shu was Sun Quan's future father-in-law and he will definitely be there in person to wave the flag for Sun Quan. Yuan Shao, who likes excitement, is close to various scholars under the name of being approachable and he has never been absent from similar occasions. Chen Lin, a representative of literati, may not like to watch the excitement but he is very interested in poetry and songs. I believe he will also be there in person for this kind of literary duel with poetry as the theme. In addition, Cao Cao likes excitement as much as Yuan Shao and he also studied with Cai Yong in the past. With his personality he will definitely go to join in the excitement. Others include Wang Qian, the father of Cai Yong's disciple Wang Can, who is now the chief historian of the general's mansion, and so on. It can be said that most of the wise men under General He Jin were not around during that time. If something happened, He Jin could not find anyone to discuss it with. In addition, He Jin had just wiped out the lineage of Queen Mother Dong and was in a period of pride and neglected to take precautions. It can be said that this was the best opportunity to plot against He Jin in the near future. Otherwise, why did Dong Zhuo and Li Ru choose this day? Even after Sun Quan changed the date, they had to plan ahead because there was no other better opportunity. As long as he could convince the 10 eunuchs and summon He Jin to the palace under the name of Empress Dowager, He Jin would be killed if he rashly entered the palace without anyone notifying him. The only thing Dong Zhuo needed to do was to claim that he would support the 10 eunuchs from outside so that the 10 eunuchs would have enough confidence and courage to take action. In this way Dong Zhuo's plan would be half successful. Chapter 74, The Eve. In the city at Qin Xuan's residence. Sun Quan's answer to Qin Xuan was simply incomprehensible. Why didn't Queen Mother He kill the Prince of Chenlu? Qin Xuan didn't answer this question at all. It's fine if he didn't answer it, but he didn't allow Sun Quan to think that way? What's the reason? Why can't he even think about it? What Sun Quan was thinking about was not something treasonous. Queen Mother He could do it, but Sun Quan couldn't think about it? Forget it if you don't want to talk about it. Sun Quan muttered. Isn't this brother Qin on the side of the young emperor? I just said something about the Prince of Chenlu. Why did he change his face faster than a woman? What's wrong with him? Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Qin Xuan ended the topic. He knew that it was useless to reason with Sun Quan. It was as difficult to correct Sun Quan as it was to correct the young emperor. If he corrected them directly, they would reject him. He could only influence them subtly. Zhengmo, did you find out what I asked you to find out yesterday? Qin Xuan asked. Sun Quan was stunned for a moment before he realized that Qin Chuan hoped that Sun Quan would learn the truth about General He Jin's extermination of Dong Zhong through Yuan Shu. Because too many things happened yesterday, Sun Quan had completely forgotten about this matter. Qin Chuan narrowed his eyes. You won't forget it, will you? He actually forgot what he promised, and it was only a day later. Sun Quan didn't take Qin Chuan's words to heart at all and didn't take his promise seriously at all. No. Sun Quan quickly shook his head and denied. Brother Qin, what are you talking about? I just moved into Yuan's mansion yesterday and found that Uncle Yuan Shu has been very busy. This means I haven't been able to find an opportunity. I can't just go and ask him face to face. If Uncle Yuan asks me why I want to know such a thing, can I still betray you, Brother Qin? Qin Chuan knew that Sun Quan was definitely looking for an excuse to lie, so he didn't expose him. You're right. It's better to ask indirectly about this kind of thing. It's not a big deal anyway. I just want to feel at ease. Good guy. Qin Chuan's words directly hit Sun Quan's soft spot. Sun Quan was a person who always responded to soft words but not hard ones, especially those who were kind to him. Sun Quan really couldn't bear to refuse them. So Sun Quan patted his chest and promised on the spot. Brother Qin, don't worry, I will help you find out tonight. I will be able to give you an answer in the next 2 days. At worst I could wait until night and use the let me think twice skill for this matter. Anyway, if I save the skill until night it will be worthless. Qin Chuan burst into laughter and poked Sun Quan's forehead with his hand. Don't think I'm provoking you. No way. Sun Quan rubbed his head, looking serious. Doing what I say is my way of being a ninja. Ahem, doing what I say is what a man should do. Qin Chuan curled his lips. Then I will wait for good news from our little man. Brother Qin, don't worry. I will never let you down. Sun Quan replied. Hearing this, Qin Chuan's face suddenly darkened. Reassurance? If this is really an answer that can make me feel at ease, I won't feel at ease. Sun Quan was stunned for a moment and then calmed down. He understood what Qin Chuan meant. Once it was proven that it was indeed Dong Zhuo who was behind the scenes, Qin Chuan would be able to rest assured because the current situation was not caused by him. But knowing what Dong Zhuo was plotting, how could Qin Chuan really rest assured? Oh, why should we live such a tiring life? Sun Quan couldn't help but sigh. Tired? Qin Chuan shook his head gently. If being tired alone can bring peace to the world, that would be the most beautiful thing in the world. Sun Quan was speechless and even felt ashamed. He found it difficult to face Qin Chuan, who seemed to be radiating divine light. Peace in the world? Last night Sun Quan was hoping for chaos in the world. Moreover, the letter he asked Zhu Mao to send back could not be taken back. Sun Quan looked at Qin Chuan and suddenly felt a little worried. Would he and Qin Chuan become enemies one day? That night, Sun Quan kept Qin Chuan's instructions in mind and used the let me think twice skill to get the answer from Yuan Shu, and he got the answer he expected. The reason why General He Jin killed Dong Zhong so quickly was that Dong Zhuo secretly told him about it. Not only that, He Jin was also planning to summon Dong Zhuo, the governor of Hedong, and Ding Yuan, the governor of Bingzhou, to lead troops into the capital to kill the 10 attendants in one fell swoop. That's why Yuan Shu wanted Sun Quan to move to his house, because Luoyang had changed recently and there might be a lot of trouble in the city. Sun Quan was naturally very touched that Yuan Shu could tell him this secret. Of course, Sun Quan also knew that Yuan Shu deliberately said it to make Sun Quan grateful to him. But no matter what Yuan Shu's motives were, Sun Quan would always remember the kindness others showed him. Then Sun Quan would have to worry about one thing: does Sun Quan need to tell Qin Chuan exactly what Yuan Shu said? After thinking about it, Sun Quan still didn't know what to do. Well, let it be. On this day, since Sun Quan had already used up his last skill on the previous probe, he went to bed early to get enough rest for the duel the next day. The sun and moon change. The day of the duel between Sun Quan and Yang Xiu finally arrived. Because Sun Quan had to go to the palace to read every morning, the time for the literary duel was set in the afternoon. In the morning, Sun Quan used his skill as usual before entering the palace. The situation was similar to yesterday. The young emperor was still confused and the Prince of Chunlu still did not come to class. It was unknown whether the Prince of Chenlu would never show up again. At first Sun Quan wanted to invite the young emperor to go with the Prince of Chenlu, but now that something like this has happened it is obviously impossible. Empress Dowager, he would not agree to let the young emperor leave the palace at this time. As for the Prince of Chenlu, Sun Quan could not even see him. The only difference in the emperor class today was that Yuan Wei tested Sun Quan's poems again and Sun Quan just recited a poem to fool him. Lead the young emperor to study? Please, at least in the past few days no one will pay attention to such things. After leaving the palace, Sun Quan was shameless enough to go to Qin Xuan's house for a free meal. After Zhu Mao left, Sun Quan and Qin Xuan were inseparable, treating him as a free bodyguard. Zheng Mo, I see that you haven't read any books recently. Are you really that confident? Qin Xuan asked. Sun Quan waved his finger, looking pretentious. Poetry tests one's foundation. It is useless to cram at the last minute. Qin Xuan laughed in silence and shook his head. Sometimes I always wonder, are you really only 8 years old? Not only in terms of knowledge and talent but also in your speech and behavior, including some views on current affairs. Many adults are not as good as you. In what kind of environment did you grow up? Are all your grandchildren like you? Maybe I am a genius, Sun Quan said bluntly while eating. Qin Xuan's eyes turned white. I've never met someone as humble as you. Brother Qin, don't blame me. In the eyes of normal people, aren't you just a child? I also want to ask, in what kind of environment you grew up? Sun Quan replied. Qin Xuan was speechless in response. In Sun Quan's eyes, Qin Xuan might be very powerful, but Qin Xuan himself knew better than anyone that he was not as powerful as he appeared. Simply put, Qin Xuan was not a decision maker, he was just an executor. The big policy and how to do it had already been decided by someone else, and Qin Xuan only made adjustments in the details. As a result, Qin Xuan felt that he had not done well, almost self-defeating, and undermined the expectations of his master. Chapter 75. Who do you think you are? It can be said that in Qin Xuan's heart, not to mention when he was 8 years old, even now Qin Xuan is far inferior to Sun Quan. As a result, Sun Quan, such a genius, treats him like an older brother, which makes Qin Xuan have to force himself to cheer up in front of Sun Quan, at least to show the appearance of a reliable brother. To put it in modern terms, Qin Xuan is just an idol with a heavy burden. The existence of Sun Quan makes him dare not even have the opportunity to be weak. In the long run, either Qin Xuan will be forced to become stronger by Sun Quan, or Qin Xuan will completely collapse one day and vent all the accumulated emotions. After dinner, the two of them rushed to Cai's house in the west of the city. Maybe it was because he didn't want to affect Sun Quan's performance later. Qin Xuan didn't mention the topic of asking about Yuan Shu to Sun Quan. Sun Quan believed that Qin Xuan definitely hadn't forgotten and probably planned to ask after the literary duel was over. Sun Quan, who wanted to let things take their own course, naturally wouldn't bring up this topic on his own initiative. Along the way, watching carriages passing by one after another, Sun Quan was surprised. What day is today? Why are there so many people? Put. Qin Xuan couldn't help but laugh. He glanced at Sun Quan and said, what other day could it be? Sun Quan opened his eyes wide and pointed at his nose. No way? Why do I deserve so many people to come and see me? I'm not sure whether they are looking at you or not, but they are all heading to Cai Yong's mansion. Qin Xuan rarely joked with Sun Quan. You know, Sun Quan is the protagonist today. It's hard to understand. Sun Quan shook his head. It's just two little brats fighting, but so many people came to watch. Are they all bored? At first Sun Quan thought that it would only cause a stir among young talents, but looking at the carriages that just passed by, it seemed that many important people had rushed over. In Sun Quan's eyes, it was as if it was a talent test in the children's palace, but it attracted the governor to watch. Is this reasonable? Zheng Mo, you underestimate the incident you provoked. Qin Xuan said, since ancient times scholars have looked down on each other, but scholars often think highly of themselves and cherish their reputations. Therefore, usually except for young and energetic young talents, there are rarely such literary disputes. Secondly, the power structure in the capital is complicated. Even if there are talented people who don't like each other, they basically won't compete openly because of their family and status. So my duel with Yang Xiao this time has become a rare literary event? Sun Quan said in astonishment. Qin Chuan nodded. At least in recent years there has been no more sensational event in Kyoto's literary world. Sun Quan was speechless for a while. It was also because there were too few entertainments in this era. Everyone wanted to join in the fun. Sun Quan thought, why not hold a martial arts competition every year, collect tickets and be the banker? Wouldn't it make a lot of money? Of course, if it were just you, those big shots would not go in person even if they were interested due to face. But Master Cai Yong is willing to be the judge, so the meaning is different. This shows that Master Cai Yong recognizes the talents of Yuan Yang Xiao and that this is no longer a fight between two juniors but a literary exchange of a very high level. Qin Chuan explained. I see. Sun Quan nodded. I thought the authorities were trying to divert the conflict and deliberately hyped it up for me. Usually after a major political event there is a blockbuster entertainment news. In Sun Quan's eyes this is an old routine. Now that Queen Mother Dong has just died and Dong Zhong has just been defeated, the higher-ups don't want the lower-level people to talk about it, so they publicize the duel between Sun Quan and Yang Xiao to divert the conflict. Pooh. Qin Chuan couldn't help but poke Sun Quan on the forehead. Can't you think of something pure in your head? Indeed, Qin Chuan also felt that the official authorities must have contributed to the sensation this time. But is the reason behind this something you, Sun Quan, should consider at such a young age? Brother Qin, who did you learn this move from? Sun Quan complained, touching his forehead. As a martial artist, Qin Chuan was very strong. It's because I'm angry at you, Qin Chuan said. Then you have to change yourself, Sun Quan said. How? Brother Qin, you don't know that there was a man named Uchiha Itachi who loved to use this move. In the end he died, Sun Quan said seriously. Qin Chuan, good job, Sun Quan. Sun Quan, ah. No. I was just saying it casually. Spare my life. Brother Qin, I was wrong. Let me explain. Everyone dies since ancient times. I just said he died, but I didn't say it was a tragedy, right? That Uchiha Itachi died peacefully in the end. Ah. Stop. I won't say anymore, I won't say anymore. While they were fighting, Kai's mansion was already within sight. Looking from afar, a group of people stood at the entrance of Kai's mansion led by Yang Xiao, and on both sides were young people of different ages who seemed to be friends of Yang Xiao who had come to support him. It had to be admitted that in Luoyang today Yang Xiao had far more connections than Sun Quan. What's this? Are they coming to greet me? Sun Quan muttered. Of course, Sun Quan was more inclined to think that Yang Xiao wanted to show him his power. Although both sides knew that it was impossible to fight today, the momentum of the other side alone would scare some timid people. We won't be late, will we? Qin Chuan whispered. Late? How is that possible? The time hasn't come yet. We are at least a quarter of an hour early, Sun Quan replied. Qin Chuan smiled bitterly, unable to explain too much to Sun Quan for a while. Early and late are relative. Maybe Sun Quan thinks you are punctual, but if some important people arrive earlier than you, you are naturally late. The reason for this situation is that Yang Xiao is to blame and Sun Quan is also to blame. Big shots are all concerned about their status and face. They will not come too early or too late. How can they come at the right time? It's very simple. Just send someone to keep an eye on Yang Xiao and Sun Quan. Once Yang Xiao and Sun Quan set out, the big shots who got the news will naturally follow them out slowly so that the time is just right, neither too early nor too late. But on this day Sun Quan came out of the palace and mixed with Qin Chuan. No one knew when he left. The bigwigs could only use the time when Yang Xiao left as the standard. Not long after Yang Xiao arrived, they also arrived one after another. As a result, they had been waiting for Sun Quan for quite a while. Therefore, there were so many young people here to welcome Sun Quan. Mr. Qin, you two are really arrogant, someone beside Yang Xiao said loudly. Sun Quan and Qin Chuan are tutors? So what? Now the bigwigs inside have already had a bad impression of these two people, so the young talents here naturally have the confidence to make trouble for Sun Quan and Qin Chuan. Who are you? Sun Quan asked directly. My father is the minister of the imperial clan, the voice from the other side resounded. He was one of the 9 ministers below the 3 dukes. Sun Quan raised his eyebrows. So who are you? Chapter 76, The Turning Point of History. Sun Quan's words caused a huge uproar. You? What a big mouth. Who are you? You are such an ignorant brat. The other side immediately started to make a noise as if they were about to start a fight if they disagreed. Nonsense, Sun Quan didn't even respect the son of the 9 ministers, not to mention that most people's families were not even 9 ministers. Isn't Sun Quan just taunting them directly on the map, calling everyone present trash? He. Sun Quan sneered. Brother Yang. Sun Quan looked at Yang Xiu and said, I know you are the most reasonable person. Let me ask you, Brother Qin and I are not late, right? Yang Xiu was silent, then spoke slowly. It is true that the agreed time has not arrived, but... No buts. Sun Quan interrupted directly, I only know that we are not late. My brother Qin and I go to the palace to serve as tutors every day. Every time before we arrive we see His Majesty standing in front of the palace from afar. Even His Majesty has not said that we are arrogant, so how dare you say that we are arrogant? Sun Quan questioned. Sun Quan. You are just quibbling. Someone on the other side shouted, Your Majesty didn't say that. That's because of His Majesty's mercy. It doesn't mean that your behavior is right. Yes, it is indeed Your Majesty's kindness. Sun Quan nodded in acknowledgement and then changed the subject. Your kind Majesty, you never think that Brother Qin and I are arrogant. But the same thing happens to you, but you think we are arrogant. Doesn't that mean that you are even more arrogant than the current Majesty? Sun Quan shouted. My goodness, when Sun Quan put this hat on the person, not to mention that the person in front of him was a young man, even an old minister would probably be scared to the point of turning pale. You don't talk nonsense. Listen, his mouth has started to tremble. I believe that after hearing what happened at the door, the bigwigs inside will not dare to bring up the same topic in front of Sun Quan. This brat is really a newborn calf who is not afraid of tigers and offends people. How will he survive in the capital in the future? Offending people? Sun Quan scoffed. After Dong Zhuo came to power, it was unknown how many of the so-called bigwigs here could still hold on to their current positions. It was a rare time when he didn't have to worry about the future. Why did Sun Quan still have to suffer from others' grievances? Ahem, Master Sun, the time is almost up, please go in first. Yang Xiu spoke up and took the initiative to change the subject. This show of force at the door was like shooting themselves in the foot. Although in the long run Sun Quan could be isolated from the circle of talented scholars in Kyoto, the current situation was quite ugly. Young people are full of vigor and the big guys love to save face, so should young people not save face? If you lose, you lose. Finding excuses to comfort yourself is even more shameful. Sun Quan and Qin Chuan walked inside side by side. Qin Chuan leaned down and whispered in Sun Quan's ear. Jungmo, can't you be a little nicer sometimes? If you push others into a desperate situation at every turn, one day you will be pushed into a desperate situation yourself. If others treat me well, I will treat them well. If others don't treat me well, why should I treat them well? Sun Quan sneered. Brother Qin, how about repaying evil with kindness? Qin Chuan sighed, and following Sun Quan's question he recited Confucius' original words. How do you repay kindness? Repay evil with justice and repay kindness with kindness. Sun Quan shrugged. That's right. Qin Chuan shook his head and said nothing. Confucius' words must be right? Of course, in this Confucian era Qin Chuan dared not say such treasonous words to his face. However, Tsihan Jingzhai is a Taoist school. Their thoughts originated from Laozi and Zhuangzi, which are different from Confucianism. Laozi said, to do nothing, to taste nothing. No matter how big or small, repay grievances with virtue. Therefore Qin Chuan and Sun Quan have different views, but he cannot refute Sun Quan's Confucian thoughts. This was not the first time Sun Quan entered Cai's mansion, so he was somewhat familiar with the place. While walking, Sun Quan silently said to himself, "Please let me think twice." He used his skill for the second time today. For this he didn't even learn the secret of immortality today. There is no time in the illusion. In reality, after a second, Sun Quan suddenly froze in place. A group of people were walking along just fine, but Sun Quan, as one of the protagonists, suddenly stood up. It was impossible for him not to attract attention. "What? Master Sun, you won't back out when the time comes?" The young man just made a sarcastic remark. It can be seen that he has completely become opposed to Sun Quan. "Zhang Mo?" Qin Xuan gently pushed Sun Quan, not knowing why he suddenly became dazed. Was Sun Quan scared? How could that be possible? Qin Xuan had been with Sun Quan for so many days and he had never seen him scared. "Me?" Sun Quan looked at Qin Xuan, his expression changed. The usually talkative little guy was now speechless. "Are you okay? Are you feeling unwell?" Qin Xuan asked hurriedly. "Ha, are you pretending to be sick?" Someone next to him immediately sneered. "Brother Qin, hold on to me," Sun Quan said, grabbing Qin Xuan's hand directly. Others may not be able to see it, but Qin Xuan can clearly feel that Sun Quan's hands have been shaking. What happened? Qin Xuan was a little puzzled and looked at Sun Quan with some concern. Scared? Nervous? Or excited? No matter what, Qin Xuan slightly held Sun Quan's hand, giving him support and reliance. At the same time, a stream of true energy passed over and Sun Quan's spirit platform lit up and his emotions gradually eased. However, although Sun Quan's hands stopped shaking, his heart was still beating fast because it was coming. The fuse event that would change the entire era was finally coming. Within this hour. Of course, this alone was not enough to cause such a big change in Sun Quan. After all, Sun Quan had known about this history for a long time and had been mentally prepared. However, Sun Quan had never thought that such a major historical event could be foreseen by him using the skill of "let me think twice." In other words, at this moment, Sun Quan and only he, Sun Quan, had the ability to change history. Yuan Sha, Yuan Shu, Chao Chao, Chen Lin and others are all in Cai's mansion now. As long as Sun Quan is willing, he has several ways to make these people leave immediately and stop He Jin from entering the palace. If He Jin is not dead, let alone other things, judging from the traces of troop mobilization, Dong Zhuo's conspiracy will soon be known to the world. If Dong Zhuo is eliminated, will the Han dynasty enter the era of princes? In the past, Sun Quan could not change the course of history because no one would believe what he said and he had no evidence. But now, at this moment, the turning point of history is in front of Sun Quan. He is like God, able to easily determine the direction of history completely by his own will. With such great power on his shoulders, how can Sun Quan not tremble and be excited? Sun Quan took a deep breath and took another step. Let's go and enjoy this rare event. After all, after today the world will be in chaos and there will never be such a prosperous era again. In these troubled times, let me, Sun Quan, open the curtain. Chapter 77. 3 Poems. Cai Mansion. The open space outside the main hall had long been surrounded by people. There were too many spectators, so the main hall could not accommodate them at all, so the arena had to be arranged outside. Fortunately, this was Cai Yong's residence and people without status could not enter at all. Otherwise, if Sun Quan had set up a ring outside today, the entire Luoyang city would probably be deserted. As soon as Sun Quan and his party entered, they heard someone laughing. "Ha, Zhangmo, you've kept us waiting for so long." The first person to speak was Yuan Shu, who obviously wanted to smooth things over for Sun Quan and use this to silence others. "Come on, let me introduce you." Yuan Shu pulled Sun Quan to a group of important figures and first asked him to meet the host of the place, Cai Yong, who was also the judge today. Then he met Chen Lin, Yuan Xiao, Chao Chao and others. These are all well-known figures, not to mention the current officialdom of Kyoto. They are also very remarkable in history. To be honest, in the Sansi illusion just now, Sun Quan couldn't help but feel a little nervous, but now after a simulation, Sun Quan is no longer stage fright and behaves in a relaxed and natural manner, not making people feel rude nor unbearable. Sun Quan is the type of person who you would think is a naughty kid based on what he does on weekdays, but when you actually see him, you find him quite likable. Of course, this is limited to elders, and they are elders who have no grudges against Sun Quan. At least at this moment, Chen Lin and others' impression of Sun Quan has improved a lot, thinking that this kid is indeed worthy of being a tutor in the palace every day. He has all the necessary etiquette, and at the same time he is neither humble nor overbearing. He is indeed a person who has seen the world. Apart from anything else, Sun Quan's vision and bearing are completely incomparable to other so-called talents. Poetry contest? Maybe Yang Xiu really met his match this time. While these people were evaluating Sun Quan was also observing them. The first to bear the brunt were naturally Cao Cao and Yuan Shao. When in the Sansi illusion, Sun Quan basically only paid attention to the two of them. First of all, Cao Cao was a man of extraordinary bearing. If anyone knew Sun Quan's evaluation at this moment, they would definitely laugh at him. Cao Cao. Maybe he has a bit of bearing, but what kind of occasion is this? Can he compare with the brothers Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu, and can he compare with Chen Lin? But Sun Quan's focus is different from that of people in this era. In this era, when people generally talk about bearing, they generally talk about Confucianism and elegance, but in Sun Quan's eyes, when people generally talk about bearing, they often talk about fierceness and military style. Cao Cao is the one who has the most later military temperament at the scene. Although it cannot be said that Cao Cao is the only one in Luoyang who looks like a soldier, but usually there are very few people who like to be pretentious. In modern terms, Cao Cao is the most capable warrior among the literati and the most literary among the warriors. After talking about Cao Cao, let's talk about Yuan Shao. Sun Quan has always thought that Yuan Shao was a hypocritical person. He would cry for no reason and put on a show, but in fact he might not take others seriously at all. But today Sun Quan found out that he was wrong. Because Yuan Shao was simply a replica of his future wife, Miss Yuan. Oh no, it should be said that Sun Quan's future wife Yuan was a replica of Yuan Shao. Yuan Shao was really good at doing things, and his speech and behavior were very elegant. If Sun Quan still looked up to Cao Cao because of his name, then he definitely looked down on Yuan Shao. Yuan Shao was not a wise leader, and his inner self was not as bright as he looked. Moreover, he was the mortal enemy of his future father-in-law Yuan Shu. Although he had such thoughts, Sun Quan could not feel any bad feelings after meeting Yuan Shao. This made Sun Quan sigh in his heart that the Chinese social art was indeed not fake. At least Sun Quan would never reach Yuan Shao's level in his lifetime. It was no wonder that the Yuan family focused on cultivating Yuan Shao instead of Yuan Shu. Looking at the temperament that Miss Yuan showed at a young age, some things are not necessarily just due to appearance. Whether it is Cao Cao or Yuan Shao, it is true that no one's success is due to luck. When Sun Quan was in the Sansi illusion, he only paid attention to Cao Cao and Yuan Shao. In reality, Sun Quan also paid attention to Chen Lin and other people. It made him seem impartial to everyone, and he did not attract other speculations because of his special attention. Chen Lin was an old handsome man with a cold face. He was not as approachable as Yuan Shao, but he had a unique sharp aura. The pen of a literati can also kill people. This is probably what he meant. When Sun Quan writes a poem later, apart from Cai Yong and others who will judge the merits and demerits, Chen Lin is probably the one who is most likely to find fault. After a brief greeting, Cai Yong finally took the lead and entered the main topic of the day. There were two pairs of tables and chairs in the middle of the field. Sun Quan and Yang Xiu sat down respectively. Writing brushes, ink, paper and inkstone were already prepared on the tables. My two gentlemen, you need to write 3 poems on the spot. One is about love, flowers, snow and moon, one is about war and battle, and the last one. Cai Yong paused and everyone on the spot listened. The last one is about bamboo. After hearing Cai Yong's topic, many people nodded. Bamboo, because of its special meaning, can be used to describe the scenery or express feelings, which can be regarded as a fairly fair topic. Gentlemen, do you have any questions? Cai Yong asked while looking at the field. No, Yang Xiu shook his head. Sun Quan just raised his hand. Mr. Sun, do you have any questions? Cai Yong asked curiously. Sun Quan stood up. Why do you have to write 3 poems in a row? Write one and comment on it, write one and comment on it, and maybe only 2 poems will determine the winner. Sun Quan said. What an arrogant boy. If it wasn't for the fact that they were in front of their elders instead of being outside the door just now, someone would have already mocked Sun Quan for losing 2 games. Of course, just because no one spoke up here doesn't mean no one really complained. On the attic next to them. Oh, Sun Quan has always been like this. He will hit a wall one day. Tang Yu said. Because of his closeness with Qin Xuan, Tang Yu completely put Sun Quan on the blacklist, especially when he saw Sun Quan and Qin Xuan coming in hand just now. Wait, holding hands. Damn it, why is Sun Quan a child? Not necessarily. I see he is so confident he must have a plan in mind. Cai Yong said beside him. Now Cai Yong's view of Sun Quan is no longer just a halo. It is no exaggeration to say that any action of Sun Quan in Cai Yong's eyes will only be interpreted positively, and she will not and dare not give any negative comments to Sun Quan. He may be confident, but the competition hasn't even started yet. How can he say that he can definitely win? Unless Sun Quan is the best in the world. Tang Yu couldn't help but say. Cai Yong shook her head. As the military strategists say, know yourself and know your enemy and you can fight 100 battles without danger. Sun Quan was a military strategist and he must have figured out Yang Shou's background in advance, otherwise he would not have made such a statement. Cai Yong said. Tang Yu couldn't help but turn his head to look at Cai Yong and said strangely. Sister Cai, are you familiar with this Sun Quan? Chapter 78, Dissociation. Sister Cai, are you familiar with this Sun Quan? Tang Yu's words made Cai Yong's face freeze. Cai Yong herself felt that she had indeed gone too far. You have to know that this was a private conversation between best friends. Unless Cai Yong was really familiar with Sun Quan, otherwise even if she had no ill feelings towards Sun Quan, Cai Yong should have followed Tang Yu's words at this time. Isn't the friendship between women just chatting about gossip, saying bad things and being infatuated with each other in private? But Cai Yong can't do it. It's not that Cai Yong has a noble character and never speaks ill of others in private, but the ancients were very taboo in this regard. Not many people dared to speak ill of the emperor even in private, or even if they were just complaining alone. Although Cai Yong also said that Sun Quan would be the emperor in the future, it does not mean that he is the emperor now. Are there still few people who speak ill of Sun Quan now? It is impossible that all these people will not have a good end in the future? Cai Yong, like most women of this era, has a desire to pursue happiness, but she can only accept it. Cai Yong would only think about many things in her heart. It is impossible for her to do things that resist the secular world. Therefore it is not that Cai Yong is worried about her words, nor is it that Cai Yong is afraid of being punished later, but that she really does not want to say bad things about Sun Quan from the bottom of her heart. Cai Yong very subjectively added several halos to Sun Quan, and Sun Quan himself was not bad and could be regarded as a dragon among men. With preconceived notions, Cai Yong naturally saw everything about Sun Quan as good. Unfortunately, Cai Yong could not tell anyone the reason behind this, especially Tang Yu in front of her. Cai Yong absolutely did not dare to mention it. One was the queen of the old emperor and the other was the future new emperor. These two people were destined to be enemies. Thinking of this, Cai Yong sighed silently. As a middleman in Tang Yu and Sun Quan had a good relationship, they did not have any real hatred. Cai Yong should have resolved the conflict between the two and made them friends again. Unfortunately, the dazzling future prevented Cai Yong from doing so. Otherwise, this would be a bad fate. Therefore, Cai Yong could only reluctantly explain to Tang Yu. No, this is only the second time I've seen him. But maybe he's still young and hasn't done anything bad, so we shouldn't be too harsh on him. Little? So what if he's little? Ignorance doesn't mean innocence. Tang Yu said angrily. Besides, Sister Cai, this doesn't seem to be a question of being too harsh, right? I think you think too highly of Sun Quan? Cai Yong smiled bitterly. Okay, I'll tell you the truth, because my father once said that Sun Quan would definitely defeat Yang Xiu. In desperation, Cai Yong could only move her father out. Tang Yu was shocked when he heard this. Did Mr. Cai really say that? Cai Yong is an authority in the contemporary literary world. If he says Sun Quan can win, then Sun Quan should really win. Moreover, Cai Yong is the judge today. Of course, Tang Yu did not doubt that Cai Yong would be too biased towards Sun Quan. Just kidding, there are so many people watching here. Everyone can basically taste the quality of a poem. How can you lie with your eyes open? However, if Sun Quan and Yang Xiu are evenly matched, Cai Yong's attitude may decide everything. That's right, my father said this. I told you secretly, but you must not spread it out. Cai Wenji reminded Tang Yu, otherwise it would damage Cai Yong's reputation. Of course I know that. Tang Yu nodded quickly. However, Mr. Cai probably didn't know Sun Quan beforehand, right? How did he know Sun Quan's level of poetry? Tang Yu expressed his confusion. Cai Wenji shook her head. I don't know either. My father didn't explain it in detail. Humph. Tang Yu snorted, looked at Sun Quan below, curled his lips and said, I still reserve my opinion. Even if he can win this time, I don't believe he will never lose in his life. Lose? Cai Wenji was also looking at Sun Quan below. Perhaps there would be twists and turns on the road ahead, but would the word lose really happen to Sun Quan? In the hall. When asked why Sun Quan could not just KO his opponent 2-0 but had to fight 3 rounds, Cai Yong smiled and replied. First, this time you are competing solely on poetry writing ability, not overall strength. If you compete and decide the winner, the result will inevitably affect your mood and performance. If you fail to show your expected level, then no matter if you are the winner or the loser, you will be unwilling to accept it. Many people nodded at the scene. What was tested was the level of poetry rather than the psychological endurance. Only if the two people performed normally could they win with confidence and lose with conviction. Secondly, it is a rare occasion to have so many poetry lovers gathered here. Naturally, everyone would like to appreciate a few more excellent works, right? Hahaha, Mr. Cai is right. Zheng Mo, stop nagging and get started. So, Mr. Sun, do you have any questions? Cai Yong asked Sun Quan. Sun Quan shrugged. There is none left. Of course, Sun Quan's action was not out of arrogance. You should know that Sun Quan did not behave like this in the previous Sansi illusion. Nonsense, he directly KO'd his opponent with a score of 2-0. So what was the meaning of Cai Yong's third question? Without mentioning that Sun Quan won the first 2 questions, people might think that he was just well prepared or even found a ghostwriter in advance. For example, the third question was about bamboo, as expected of a father and daughter. How could Sun Quan not seize the opportunity given by God? This time he must rewrite the poem that he failed to write in reality last time in front of Cai Wenji. Therefore, the reason why Sun Quan suddenly asked this question was actually to distance himself from the subsequent events in advance. Look, I originally wanted to finish my opponent instantly, but you insisted on playing 3 games, wasting so much time, and no one went back to remind He. In the end, you can't blame me, right? Although Sun Quan was young, he knew that the court was not a clean place. This time Dong Zhuo took advantage of Sun Quan's incident. Although everyone knew that it had nothing to do with Sun Quan, there was no guarantee that there would not be hostile people who would use this to attack Sun Quan in the future. Therefore, Sun Quan said this now, deliberately letting Cai Yong and the bigwigs at the scene give a clear answer, which was to drag Yuan, Xiao Chao Chao and others into the water. If Sun Quan was really responsible, then Yuan, Xiao and others would naturally be jointly responsible. After the interlude, the competition finally began. At Cai Yong's command, Sun Quan and Yang Xiu picked up their pens at the same time. When writing, the two looked at each other and smiled slightly, and they unexpectedly felt a sense of mutual sympathy. Regardless of the final result, to be honest, at least Yang Xiu's character was quite honest, Sun Quan thought. The first 2 themes were decided by Sun Quan and Yang Xiu long ago. Although Sun Quan suddenly moved up the competition date, they probably had prepared their own ideas for the 2 poems. Yang Xiu did not pretend to think, but directly picked up the pen, which was considered as his active acknowledgement of the draft. That was why Sun Quan praised Yang Xiu for his honesty. I believe Yang Xiu also thought the same of Sun Quan at that time. Unfortunately, although Yang Xiu was honest, he was too arrogant. If Sun Quan was older than Yang Xiu, they might be friends. But Sun Quan was younger than Yang Xiu, much younger than him, so Yang Xiu refused to accept it. Yang Xiu didn't look down on Sun Quan, he just didn't want to believe it. Chapter 79, A Bystander Sees More Clearly? Swish swish swish, Yang Xiu wrote quickly. Since he had decided not to pretend, Yang Xiu naturally wanted to finish the first two poems as quickly as possible and then leave himself enough time to think carefully about the third one. Unlike Yang Xiu, Sun Quan's speed was neither fast nor slow, and he seemed to be unhurried, just as Cai Yong said, as if he had already made up his mind. In fact, no one knew what Sun Quan was thinking at this time. The reason why Sun Quan was neither fast nor slow, to be precise, was not for anything else but to try to write better. Of course, Cai Yong just said that this time they were simply competing in their poetry writing ability, and good handwriting would not add points, but Sun Quan knew better than anyone that what he was about to write was definitely a masterpiece. It was no exaggeration to say that this would be taken back and framed and passed down through the ages as a family heirloom. Do you think Sun Quan could not take it seriously? Even if he didn't want to save face, he had to respect the original author, right? Well, this guy who always claims to respect the original author wrote the three characters Sun Zhengmo at the end without hesitation. Ahem, nonsense. This is something that will be passed down through the ages. If I don't write my name properly, who can be sure that it was written by me, Sun Quan? Of course, even so, Sun Quan believed that the so-called historians in the future would probably think that he had someone else write it for him, especially after becoming an emperor, adding a few legends to his youth which seemed quite reasonable to analyze. Alas, mortals are mortals after all, just like Yang Xiu now. Unless they see it with their own eyes, they are unwilling to admit that there is such a genius in the world. In short, because of Sun Quan's slow motion, Yang Xiu had already finished writing two poems, put down his brush and began to close his eyes and meditate, while Sun Quan had just finished writing the first one. Sun Quan was kind and considerate of others. In order to make it easier for others to take it home and frame it as a family heirloom, he changed the paper and wrote the second poem after finishing one. Those who were not aware of the situation saw it from a distance and thought that Sun Quan had made a mistake in writing the first poem and was ready to write it again. Many people shook their heads at once. At this time, there are only two possibilities for rewriting. 1. The words were written wrong. Even if Sun Quan wrote the poem in advance, he could write the words wrong on the spot. This shows that Sun Quan's psychological quality is not up to standard. Even if the first two poems are acceptable, it is difficult for people to be optimistic about his performance in the third poem. 2. Sun Quan decided to change the original draft at the last minute. This is an even worse omen. It shows that Sun Quan himself is not optimistic about the poem he wrote. He has no confidence in the work he thought about for several days before. Can we expect him to create a better one in a short time? VIP side area. Your son-in-law doesn't seem to be very good? Cao Cao said to Yuan Shu. Cao Cao, Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu grew up together. In later times, they would be the second generation of rich people who race cars. Although they are not as dandy as they were in the past and their relationship may not be as close as before, Cao Cao still speaks bluntly about some things. Yuan Shu frowned, obviously feeling a little unsure. Until the end, who knows the outcome? That's right. Yuan Shao nodded. I saw Zheng Mo's face without any panic. Even if he changed the manuscript temporarily, he should not lose his composure. Maybe he suddenly thought of a better poem. Maybe he will give us a surprise later. Sun Quan is now not only Yuan Shu's prospective son-in-law but also Yuan Kuei's direct disciple, so Yuan Shao is at least on the surface on Sun Quan's side. Otherwise. Chen Lin shook his head at Yuan Shao's statement. If he really had a flash of inspiration and thought of a perfect poem, Sun Quan's face must have been full of ecstasy. Now he looks so calm, I would rather believe that he just made a mistake in writing. But if he made a mistake in writing, it means that his mentality is unstable. If his mentality is unstable, how can his face be calm? Cao Cao couldn't help but say. What? You said Sun Quan doesn't show his emotions? If Sun Quan really has facial paralysis, then all the above speculations will be overturned. Besides, Sun Quan is now well known for his arrogance and straightforwardness among the younger generation. If he is really so sinister and doesn't show his emotions, would he still have the literary battle with Yang Xiu today? Then, what if the characters are written incorrectly or ugly? Chen Lin thought for a moment and said. Everyone was stunned and then burst into laughter. He may not really be able to do such a thing. Ignoring the discussions around him, Sun Quan slowly finished writing the second poem, signed his name, put it aside again, and then took out the third piece of paper. This time the onlookers were immediately back to the beginning. Could it be that Sun Quan was really changing the poem at the last minute? I say, is it really okay for him to be like this? Even Tang Yu in the small building subconsciously worried about Sun Quan. Will he not be able to compose a single song in the end? No, Cai Yong affirmed. Here she was not superstitious about Sun Quan. After all, there was no direct connection between the emperor and poetry. Cai Yong was superstitious about her father. Since Cai Yong said that Sun Quan would win, then Sun Quan would definitely win. Look at Sun Quan. He has changed the second one and still looks calm. I guess although he is revising the poem, it is actually getting better and better. Even the one he did not revise is better than Yang Xiu's. Now that it is getting better and better, it is naturally impossible for him to lose. Sister Caillou, well, maybe you are right. Something is wrong. Very wrong. Women are usually very sensitive. Tang Yu felt that there must be something between Cai Yong and Sun Quan, otherwise Cai Yong would not behave like this. Could it be that Cai Yong thought that Tang Yu had a bad relationship with Sun Quan and it was difficult to say it out loud, so she deliberately hid it from him? But when did these two people have any intersection? Just when Tang Yu began to doubt her good sister. I'm done. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Sun Quan raised his hand and said, "Are you done pretending?" Many people were stunned and their minds were still unable to wrap around for a while, thinking that even if Sun Quan had changed one poem, it was only one. They had been staring at Sun Quan the whole time, so could Sun Quan come up with two poems in an instant? Are the three capitals ready? Even Cai Yong couldn't help but ask Sun Quan. Sun Quan pointed to the three pieces of paper on his desk, somewhat puzzled. Isn't this a matter of course? Even though these people were far away and couldn't see clearly what I wrote, but I deliberately changed three pieces of paper. It was so obvious. Are they all blind? Of course, despite the complaints, Sun Quan just thought that he had written three poems in one breath, which was too amazing, so others found it hard to believe. However, they didn't know what kind of misunderstanding his behavior had caused. Cough, cough, cough. It's so damn embarrassing. Chen Lin, Yuan Xiao, Yuan Shu, Chao Chao, etc. The guys who had just discussed with others and even made confident analyses now pretended to be blind and had tinnitus, remained silent and moved in unison, drinking tea with their heads down. Ha 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 ha. On the small building, Tang Yu laughed so hard that he couldn't straighten his back. Sun Quan, it's Sun Quan indeed, it's his style indeed. Stop laughing. Cai Yong, who was standing next to her, blushed and wanted to find a hole in the ground to crawl into. Chapter 80, Regret for Yang Xiu. Seeing the scene, everyone reacted violently and was stunned. Even Cai Yong showed a rather surprised look. Sun Quan was quite satisfied with his performance. The reason why he wrote three poems in a row without pretending to think about it after finishing two poems was that Sun Quan wanted to make a splash. If you don't do it, don't do it. If you do it, you have to do it to the extreme. This goal was not achieved at the Taifu Mansion at first, but now with Cai Yong, Sun Quan finally achieved it. Anyway, even if Sun Quan pretended to think about it, someone would definitely say that he had already prepared the poem. In this case, why not just do it? Regardless of whether others really think so or think that he is a genius with quick thinking, Sun Quan will become a topic of public opinion. Well, the duration of this topic will be shorter. There is nothing we can do about it. Who can blame such a big event for happening later? I won't mention it later. Mr. Sun, are you sure you don't want to change it? Cai Yong confirmed to Sun Quan. You won't get any extra points for handing in the paper early, and there's still so much time left, so you might as well use it up slowly. You might suddenly have a flash of inspiration and come up with a great sentence. No, Sun Quan said with great certainty, I think that when writing poetry the key is to write it in one go and complete it in one go. Changing it afterwards will only make it superfluous and lose the original meaning. Mr. Sun is quite knowledgeable despite his young age. Cai Yong said, since you are not planning to change it, please go to the side and rest for a while. As he said this, Cai Yong turned to Yang Xiu. Young Master Yang, you don't have to rush. There is still a lot of time. Thank you, Mr. Cai, for the reminder. Yang Xiu stood up and thanked Cai Yong. Yang Xiu was indeed surprised when Sun Quan suddenly handed in his paper just now. At that time he was in deep thought with his eyes closed and did not pay attention to the passage of time. Although Yang Xiu thought it was not long, Sun Quan, who was obviously slower than him at the beginning, caught up later and finished 3 poems. Naturally, Yang Xiu subconsciously thought that he had been thinking too long. After thinking for so long, he still couldn't come up with anything. He was completely in a daze. How could Yang Xiu not panic? How could he not be confused? But then Yang Xiu found that the bystanders seemed to be as surprised as he was, which meant that Sun Quan must have written it too quickly rather than in thinking too long. However, Yang Xiu still felt unsure. How much time was left? Sun Quan finished the poem so quickly. Was he really a genius? It was not until Cai Yong spoke to him that Yang Xiu was completely relieved. Ha! After taking a deep breath, Yang Xiu squinted his eyes and looked at Sun Quan. Was Sun Quan doing this on purpose? Was this a psychological warfare by Sun Quan trying to disrupt his thinking? It wasn't that Yang Xiu was paranoid, but Sun Quan had just done something similar not long ago. When Yuan was selecting disciples, wasn't Sun Quan's quick answer a tactic? Calm down, calm down. Yang Xiu gradually regained his composure. This Sun Quan was just a little clever. This kind of crooked way could not make up for the difference in strength. Writing 3 poems in one breath? So what? Although the third question of Cai Yong was a temporary question, the theme of bamboo was not unpopular. Sun Quan may have written a poem about bamboo before. He thought he could not think of a better one in a short time, so he used it directly. While making a splash, he also set a trap for his opponent. In fact, Yang Xiu had to admit that Sun Quan was really amazing. In such a short period of time, he was able to make such a decision instantly and decisively and use his only advantage to deliver a fatal blow to the enemy. Sun Quan was not only full of courage but also well-versed in the art of war. I believe that among the descendants of military strategists, Sun Quan is also a leader. However, as I said before, being familiar with the art of war does not mean that he is also good at poetry. Yang Xiu did not believe that Sun Quan could be good at everything at such a young age. He did not believe that there was such an all-round genius. After adjusting his mindset and regaining his confidence, Yang Xiu did not start writing immediately but continued to close his eyes and ponder. It seemed that he had truly gotten rid of the influence of Sun Quan. Seeing this, Sun Quan, who had already walked aside to rest, shook his head and sighed. What? Are you regretting that your plan failed? Qin Chuan said. Maybe. Sun Quan did not comment. I just feel sorry for Yang Xiu. What is there for Yang Xiu to regret? Qin Chuan wondered. If Yang Xiu fell into the trap, then his loss to me would be understandable. But now that he didn't fall into the trap, it will be difficult for him to find a reason to comfort himself afterwards. Sun Quan shook his head. You. Qin Chuan felt both amused and angry and stretched out his hand as if to poke Sun Quan's forehead again. This time Sun Quan saw the opportunity quickly and blocked Qin Chuan's attack with his hands in advance. Brother Qin, I suddenly discovered a shortcoming of yours. Sun Quan said suddenly. Although Qin Chuan had a hunch that Sun Quan would not say anything good, he still couldn't help but ask. What are the shortcomings? Your shortcoming is that you don't like to hear the truth. Every time I tell the truth, you want to poke me. Sun Quan complained. Tell me the truth? This time Qin Chuan was really amused by Sun Quan. Do you have a divine eye that can see through the future? Are you sure you can win? Even if you are confident what hasn't happened yet can be called the truth? I really have a third eye and can see the future. Sun Quan laughed. Unfortunately, no one took his joke seriously. So Brother Qin, don't poke around. If you break something, I'll hold you responsible. The legendary heavenly eye is usually on the forehead like Erlang Shin, but don't worry, I will take responsibility to the end. Upstairs. Seeing Sun Quan and Qin Chuan fighting in public, ignoring others, Tang Yu stamped her feet in anger. Does he really think he has won? Compared to the result that has long been determined, I am more curious about what kind of 3 poems Sun Quan wrote. Cai Yong said. Tang Yu curled his lips. It seems like it was all thought out long ago anyway. What difference does it make whether it is something you have thought of long ago or something you wrote on the spur of the moment? Cai Yong said. Most people may not be able to write a masterpiece in their entire lifetime. After hearing what Cai Yong said, Tang Yu was more certain that Cai Yong was loyal to Sun Quan and said unhappily, "How can there be no difference?" He had thought of it a long time ago and it might not have been done by Sun Quan. Tang Yu's words were already quite malicious. What he meant was that Sun Quan had asked someone to write for him in advance. I didn't even know the questions my father would give me in advance. Cai Yong frowned slightly. Ask people to write a poem for each category. Maybe a blind cat will stumble upon the right one. Tang Yu said deliberately. He wanted to see to what extent Cai Yong would care about Sun Quan. Cai Yong smiled slightly. Yang Xiu's current talent is such that even if he is in his 40s he will still be a leader. How many people in the world can write a poem that can beat Yang Xiu? And he can write one poem in every category. If there is such a person, he would have been famous all over the world long ago, right? Cai Yong said with a smile. Besides, if there is such a helper, he would not appear in the Military Strategist. In comparison, if you say that Yang Xiu hired someone to write for him, I might believe it a little bit because only the Yang family could have such resources. Tang Yu's eyes widened. It was too obvious. Sister Cai, tell me the truth, what is your relationship with Sun Quan? Tang Yu asked directly. Don't worry, you don't have to worry about me. I always hate that vixen. Sun Quan is quite to my liking. If you are really good friends with Sun Quan, I will not embarrass him in the future. Guys, that's for today. Please like and subscribe to my channel. 10 likes for next part. Thanks again.